All right, well, welcome everyone to our city council meeting and our work session. And I imagine that most of you are not here to discuss the UDOT and the ARPA and fire. Well, Chris is. Well, that's one. Okay, well, I think we should move right into the reason that most of us are here. Val and Beth, would you guys come up, please? So, yes, right here in this little alleyway. That way you can be on the camera too. So I just want to read this and Dora will put this together. So it's just a commemoration and a expression of gratitude for Wild News. But it says, for years of volunteer service to its citizens as fire and EMS leaders and Woodland Hills Fire Department, beginning September 1991 and June 1996, combined totals equal to 49 years, 18,105 days, 434,520 hours. So that is. You know, I think that that is a wonderful legacy. You know, we all strive to leave our mark in this world, and I don't think that it can be any better stated than a well-lived life. And so thank you for everything that you've done for our city over the years. We wish you the best in your next adventure, and hope certainly you'll come back and see us in 18 months, 2 years.
Can you tell us where you're going? Leeds, England. Of course you are. Who wouldn't take a better place and better people to serve with?
But that was Val's mission when he was younger too.
Oh, no kidding. When he was younger?
Hey, I'd like to say something to the council and mayor that, thank you for what this council has done and the previous councilors to allow a city to foster and support volunteer fire and EMS. Without your support and now without allowing that to take place, then the wonderful people that volunteer their time and get involved and put themselves in harm's way wouldn't really happen. So it starts here. So thank you, council, for what you've done for the city and Mayor Prey and the previous mayors through all the many years.
434,000.
It's just we see other cities and some of them have a relationship, none of them have a relationship, I think, with the city council and the emergency services like this city has. So thank you. That is it was an honor to serve.
It was most definitely. Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate it and want to present you with that, and please join me in.
Picture the events here. I'm close, I'm here close. So
All that.
We go home.
That's the good stuff.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Maybe you didn't want to stay for the rest of the
It's like what? All of our public comment judgments.
Let her what?
What it said.
I said,
Oh, you don't have your phone.
I really want to.
But-
Thanks, you guys.
thank you. Yes.
They retire on a lot, doing things without. About that. Yeah, and thanks Earl for putting forth the effort to make. And Jody, imagine she made a really nice. Okay. Well, let's move on to item 2 then, which is tabled, because there's some additional information that will be needed. And so item 3, discussion of a number of grants. So Carrie, please.
I'm ready. All right, I just wanted to talk to you for a second about, I don't know if I'm on camera, so. Kind of scooching a bit more. No, when I first started building my house in 1990, our city was a lot different than it is today. I mean, snow removal, fire protection, clean and clear and reliable water. Our utilities, especially our gas, we didn't have a lot of those things in place. So we've really grown as a city. And I like this quote from Einstein: "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking as we used to create them." And although we established our city in 1979, not with any idea that we would have issues or problems, but a city council's business is almost always solving problems. So I think we need to kind of think of things that that we have opportunities in things that we don't even know right now. And that's one of the reasons why I applied for this UDOT TPA grant, which was, you should have all gotten the materials in your packet. And for me, it's how does what we're doing relate to the biggest problems that our residents have? You know, their health concerns, their economic jobs, right? Their children, their well-being, some of the things that really hit them in their heart, that we're making policy and decision changes that affect them in different ways. And hopefully we're being thoughtful in that discussion, and that we are really doing things that help them. And in that tone, I think we have to make decisions that have measurable impacts to the people that we serve. And so with that, I felt that in my, I'm ending my second term on the council here this next year. And one of the challenges that I've seen is, one, how do we maintain our quality of life? And two, how do we become sustainable in a lot of different areas? And we know, at least financially, we've struggled. Every year, the heart wrench that it is to pick and choose the winners and the losers in our budget, recognizing that it's not as easy as people would think. So I started thinking about sustainability, keeping and retaining good employees. How important is that for us in a small city? I shared with you the article about 60% of the clerks in the state are leaving their jobs because of the stress and the demands that are put on them in their cities. And yet we have people who are loyal and who stay, not because of the pay, obviously, but because we know their institutional knowledge of, we have our staff here tonight. It's because of their love of the city, and they want to do their best despite criticism. They're good employees, and we want to retain them, and I hope they know how much we appreciate them. Sustainability financially, our taxes, our lack of other revenue sources. How do we provide services in a timely manner? What are the needs versus the wants, and who gets the money? Roads versus water. We have a lot of emotional requests that come to us, but yet we also have to acknowledge that logically, we're like a senior citizen, we're on a fixed income. And we cannot stretch it any more than what we have. Our quality of life, a lot of people have told us all, right? They were drawn to live in Woodland Hills. There was something that pulled them here. It wasn't just that they saw a house for sale and said, let's try out Woodland Hills. They feel that they were drawn here. Our quality of life, our sense of community, our mountain, our trees, our wildlife. We want to protect what we have, and yet we know that growth is constant and it's changing. We know we have a fair amount of land in our city that is undeveloped. We have influence of the state on growth right now, zoning, housing. How do we grow without fear? How do we become sustainable? And that was the whole premise for me writing this UDOT TPA grant for visioning, for, well, we say mission, visioning, values, and flowing into updating our general plan. Are there things that we need to do so we're proactive in the growth that we know is coming? And so to that end, since last July, when we first were awarded the grant, all 4 consultants are on the screen. I'd like to introduce them. Mike Hansen, who is, some of you have met before. He works for Rural Consultants, and he is, which is a subsidiary of Jones and DeMille. So he gets an extra accolade just because, you know, there's Ted and we all love Ted. And so, and then his colleague is Kendall, and they work on that planning side, the ordinances, etc. And then we have Dr. Delana Tonks, and Gwendolyn, are you a doctor as well? I'm so used to just calling them Delana and Gwen that I don't really call them by their titles, but I appreciate their expertise. They represent Allegiant Solutions. They and all in your packet, it shows their scope of work, and we have been meeting now for maybe 6 weeks as a group, the 4 of them, to kind of come together with the scope of work for this project, recognizing that they each bring a different skill set to what our goals and accomplishments are. And so with that, we have included what the purpose of the grant is, what it cannot do, and what we were awarded, what we put in our grant specifically to do for Woodland Hills. And we're hoping again that we will be able to showcase a real example of how community planning should be done. They work very well together with themselves and then with me. I'm hoping we're able to look this over at the roadmap, the project roadmap. We have 3 phases. This first part, what we are asking tonight for the signing of the contracts for the first phase. This first phase is very critical. It's the groundwork for everything else that will be done afterwards, but we decided to do it in phases because it could shift the scope of work based on what we find out from research, as well as these focus groups that we will be starting in January with our citizens. Every citizen will be invited to participate, to give their input, and then the steering committee will be able to take that data, and we will be able to make informed decisions based not just on anecdotal stories, but on real evidence. And so I'm asking for your vote tonight in accepting these contracts so that the mayor can have the ability to sign them. He had already signed the rural community consultant one, that's not realizing that it would have this one. So we have placed that back in this packet so that you could review it all. I'd like to give you opportunities to ask either myself or any of the 4 consultants here. If you have any questions about the proposals or how we are going forward, they will be available as we progress to give the council updates from their standpoint. Of course, all of you will be participating, so you will see what's happening in lifetime. With that, is there any questions?
I have a few, if
Yeah.
I can start. So, the one thing, as I look at this, Carrie, I wonder, so RCC is, I mean, this is well within their wheelhouse to develop a general plan. My understanding of what we're trying to do by bringing Allegiant on board is take what RCC is going to do in terms of a general plan, and then it will then add a layer of more strategic planning. Is that a fair characterization of it?
It's backwards. We're gonna do the strategic planning first, so that then we can go into what we may need to do to change and update the general plan. There may be very few changes, there may be more. The one thing that, as Mike and I discussed this summer in July, when we first met in Kendall, is that yes, they have a wheelhouse for planning and zoning, but if you saw in the packet, they delineate what their specialties are on that second page. That why it's a partnership. One specializes in strategic plan and operation analysis, while the other focuses on land use policy and code. So although they have skill sets that complement each other, they are separate in what they're really skilled at doing, and they feel as a team that they will be able to work very well together to give us the overall product, as we would say, to benefit our city based on what we were awarded. The first thing that we were awarded was strategic plan and community vision, and then going in to where the outcome is an updated the plan.
And so that brings me to my next question with respect to the deliverables. So the amount of the grant, the thing that I would like to be sure of is at the end of this, that we do have at a minimum, I mean, the strategic plan, I think that is a great effort. And I
We've
think
never had one.
It's an effort worth pursuing. But in terms of the money, is this going to allow us to, at a minimum, end up with that general plan? Or are we gonna get partway through this and then find that we've gotten 70% of the way there on the general plan, but we spent the balance on the strategic visioning, and then we have to kick in the remaining balance from the city budget? So
Well, and one of the things is, if I wouldn't have applied for this grant, the planning commission would have updated the plan with no money. That's the reality, right? They would have had to go forward in doing what they're doing with no additional funding. And so part of adding the strategic part to it gives a little more meat to what we're doing. And actually showcasing how we're going to grow, not just checking the boxes of this is what's required at the state, but giving more tools to the planning commission. But it is, the grant was actually written for multiple steps here, not just the end product. So Mike, can you kind of better explain that? Because you and I have talked about this several times about what's in your wheelhouse. If you noticed in his plan, 50% was upfront, the second phase is 20%, and the final phase is 30%. That's a time and budget.
Okay.
So Mike?
Yeah, no, that was a great introduction. Yeah, Mike Hansen, Rural Community Consultants, got Ted's reflected glory, I think is how I was introduced. But anyway, what you're looking for the final deliverable is, well, you have to have a finished general plan. I mean, just to dot the I's and cross the T's with your grant folks, so UDOT is expecting a general plan because that's, the legal requirement of a city. We were hoping to do is give them a general plan, but one that's different than other general plans that have been created in the past. It's got the traditional blocks, of course, but it's got a lot of community-driven values and visions and principles that maybe last longer or make the general plan live a little bit better than sitting on a shelf. That's the way I'm interpreting it. Is we come out with it's more than just your traditional land use, transportation, housing, parks, the stuff that you see in a normal general plan. We think that when we have a partner, we can come up with more than that. To Carrie's issue of the sustainability, if that made sense.
Right, we wanted it to be to showcase. I mean, we were very deliberate in choosing these consultants to make sure that our documents are are living, breathing documents, that we actually don't just say we check the boxes and it sits on the shelf, but actually something our staff, our council, our planning commission can look to as a guide, a real guide to the vision of our city. Not to just say, okay, our code says you can do this and this, so okay. Because right now, we're going down the same path where we are now, and all of us who are policy makers know that that's not sustainable. But how do we maintain that quality of life and have sustainability? It takes a different innovative thinking, and not that our consultants are bringing in those thoughts, but they're going to take the thoughts of our residents, who we have a very well educated populace here, take that information that is given to us in these different focus groups that we'll be having and analyze. Their strength is in analyzing that data to recognize what does that mean? What does this data mean? And maybe from a planning standpoint, Mike and Kendall will be able to say, well, your current ordinance is here. If you tweaked it this way, it would still be in line with with vision. Or this is kind of obsolete, it's not asked for by the state, you might need something new. And along the way, as I said, 2 members of our planning commission will serve on the steering committee of this organization, and that would be Ted and Lori. And so from a financial standpoint and from an engineering standpoint, both of those also in their role on the planning commission update, we'll be able to then meet with Wayne very regularly and be able to say, oh, so far, this is what we're seeing, because public process will still take place where planning commission will have things, if changes need to be made, they'll have their public hearing, it will be sent to us, we have our public hearing. And so it will take time over the course of this whole this whole process, but it will be very thought out, and it will be deliberate and intentional, not just, oh, we think it should be. And so that's it.
But you do have a reasonably high level of confidence that we will be able to
Oh.
get to that plan within this UDOT budget.
Yeah, that is our goal, right? In the 3 phases, is that we will get that, and actually updating the general plan starts in that 2nd phase, that planning phase. And then we have an implementation phase, which will showcase how do we then really implement it to be where we have metrics in place that we can showcase our residents as we go forward. You gave us this, we have gone here, decisions are made here, it's measurable, and it has an impact, because we're getting encroached, right? What's happening is our citizens are becoming fear-based, not only from national rhetoric, but because the building is coming up, and as more building comes up with smaller lot sizes or whatever the case may be with Salem, they're going to be, I've already had people saying, why didn't you tell Salem to stop that? Well, that's not our responsibility, that's in Salem, just like Salem can't tell us what to do. But if we can get residents' input on especially on their values, we can start looking at maybe alternate ways of thinking of how do we become sustainable? How do we increase our revenue? Besides just tax raises, I think that's been our only mechanism, but are there other choices? Maybe, we don't know. But if we can at least have that input, we have a better foundation of making these policy decisions.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions, either for me or for our consultants?
I've got some questions, not for you.
Yeah, fine. That's what
Only for the
it's.
city. Excellent. I agree, me, I love generating revenue, I'm always pro generating revenue. I guess my question would be more just to get to know, the consultants here, could we get a little bit of, your backgrounds? What's your experience, especially your municipal experience, things of that nature?
Let's just go, how about Mike, Gwendolyn, Kendall, Delana?
You unmute David Pratt in case that's sometime.
There it is. Yeah, so again, Mike Hansen. I've been in this industry working on local government issues for oh my gosh, 20 something more than I want to admit years. RCC is currently under contract. We think we're around 20 contracts right now, all over the state. We're in Wyoming. Our smart person's Kendall, so you got to hear from her. But the only reason I went into consulting, oh my gosh, 7 years ago, is I was up on the Hill in governor's offices. I was in 4 different governor's offices. I did a lot of local government interaction type of work I'm doing now, just not getting paid for it, basically, when I was up there. But when I was with Huntsman, he said government should run a little bit more like a business. It's not a business, but that's what Governor Huntsman was saying. And so he put me in charge of optimization initiatives up there. And, we played with all kinds of stuff to see, and they were out of the box ideas. And that's the exciting part to me with strategic planning. We played with the 4-day work week, and we ended up with the best managed state. That was one of my initiatives. And Herbert carried some of that on, and then I got tired of working up there. And so anyway, that's what we do. We are experts at, I'm a certified planner. We write code, we write plans. Tall, dark, and handsome. Sorry, I'm getting carried away, but whatever questions I can I can answer for you, I'd love to.
All right,
Wonderful. Thank you, Mike.
Gwendolyn?
Hi, are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Gwendolyn Smith, and I have been working as an executive consultant to companies primarily, not as much cities. But my work has been aligning teams, so driving culture, taking strategy from companies and driving it throughout organizations. So it's very much leadership-based, culture-based, team alignment, and operations. So a lot very principle-based, very values-based, and across multiple industries. I have worked with my local government as a volunteer in different capacities with Draper City, helped form and run the Draper Peer Court, and also worked as the co-chair of the Draper Youth Council. And that was a fantastic opportunity. My experience is limited when it comes to the policy side, but that's what Delana Tonks brings to the table with Allegiant Solutions, and I would turn the time over to her, unless anybody has any questions on my background.
And she has, I think, Gwendolyn, you have an MBA, right?
I do. I have an MBA undergrad in computer science, worked at the executive level for Avanti and Instructure before going into consulting to numerous companies throughout the nation.
Wonderful.
Kendall or Delana, who's ready? Hey, Delana?
Okay, if you can hear me, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you all. I'm Delana Tonks. My background is varied. I started as an educator. I'm currently the executive director of a public charter school, but I also have experience with policy and a lot of municipal and state level governmental positions, volunteer positions. I have been on the Draper Planning Commission for the last 4 years. I'm currently on the Judicial Nominating Committee for the Supreme Court, the Appellate Court. I sat on the Immigration Committee appointed by Speaker Lockhart, and I've served in various capacities in Draper City as well, including as the co-chair of the Draper Youth Council many years ago. So, and I apologize if you can hear the background noise. I'm traveling and you're picking up everything that's going on behind me. I'm at a truck stop, so but this meeting was important, and so it's all good. But my PhD focuses on research and evaluation, and that evaluation piece includes program evaluation. It includes participatory evaluation, which is one of the things that I bring to the table with Allegiant Solutions, particularly in getting input from all of the stakeholders across the city. There are a lot of competing priorities, and there's one pot of money that has to be spent for all of those competing priorities. And when you have ownership in the process, and when your people have ownership in the process, and this change management that Gwendolyn talked about, the process is smoother and the outcome is more desirable because people feel like they were a part of it. And so that's what we bring to the table to supplement and enhance all of the good work that Mike and Kendall are doing.
Thank you. So, Kendall?
Yes, good evening. Hopefully you guys can hear me. My name is Kendall Welch. I'm a planning specialist with Rural Community Consultants, which is also part of Jones and Amell Engineering. So I've been with that firm for a little over 3 years now. My professional background, I've got a little over 8 years in the community development fields. And what I mean by that is I've worked for municipalities, both large and small. So I kind of span the gambit, and I've worked in places specifically in Arizona and Utah. My most recent municipal role was as a planner for the city of Layton. I was there for about 3 years and served in a not only consultant capacity, but actually as a on-staff planner for them. I've got loads of experience with text amendments, zoning ordinances, code enforcement. Mike mentioned that he's certified. I am certified as well. My certifications are slightly different than his though. Mine are International Code Council certifications. So I am more focused on the building side. So that's been traditionally the roles that I've played in my municipal experience. But I got interested in the world of planning. It sucked me in and it hasn't let me go yet. I like to say you name it and I've pretty much done it, from code enforcement to zoning ordinance rewrites. I have experience directly with general plans in Arizona, and I was also part of Layton Forward, which was Layton's general plan update most recently in the last couple of years. So I've been there, done that too. And then also, I don't know if Mike talked about it at all, but we also have CivicLink. CivicLink is our online hosting our platform, and I'm also heavily involved in that. My degree is actually in information technology and web design specifically, but I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades and kind of do a whole bunch of stuff. So that's a little bit about me, and if there's any questions, I can answer those.
Thanks, Kendall. So you can see, as I reached out to these two consulting groups for different purposes, and yet the four of them even individually bring something different to the table within their own organization. And I wanted it to be well-rounded. I wanted it to be so that when we spent this money, that it was spent wisely and that we got the most bang for our buck. And I feel that the four of them do that because they're, like I said, I really feel that they're covering a lot of bases with just four people in their experience, their knowledge, and what they want to deliver to us. The four of them are actually maybe even hoping that they will be able to have a toolbox to showcase Woodland Hills as they work together to other communities, because they're working so well together.
Thank you. Any other questions? Janet, Doral, David? Okay, well, we'll take your silence as no further questions. All right, yeah, Wayne.
If I might make some comments, this has been on my mind for a while and with some concerns. Few sleepless nights from the attention I've tried to give to it. If you'll indulge me, I've written some comments because I didn't want to overlook some of the points that I wanted to make. Like the Planning Commission is responsible for drafting a general plan and providing the same to the City Council for review, rejection, or approval. I have heard some general comments about the company Allegiant. Am I pronouncing that correctly? But no one has ever talked to the Planning Commission about it or what it would do or could do as it relates to the general plan. While they apparently have some expertise in strategic planning for corporations and the like, I understand that they have never been involved directly with the city's general plan. May be mistaken, but that's my understanding.
Delana sits on her planning commission, so she has done a general plan with her.
Okay, but not the purpose that they're doing this with strategic planning.
Well, remember, strategic plan and general plan are two different documents.
Correct.
And we're bringing them together, but not overstepping. Mike and I talked about this quite a bit. Wayne, is that the purpose was not to take over anything from the planning commission's responsibility. It was to give the planning commission tools to showcase, as you are updating, some of this visioning and strategic plan and how that might assist you. And also then provide the revenue and the planning consultants' expertise in phase 2 or 3. Now, Allegiant may or may not be in phase 2 or 3, but rural consulting will be.
Okay. Good to
So
know.
just to let, that's one of the reasons why we divided it into the 3 phases, because we'll wait and see what the data shows in phase 1 before we move on to phase 2 and to see where we're actually going. Now, of course, she talked about Civic Link. That's something the city's outside of what we're doing. And this is something, a whole nother discussion with the mayor and the rest of you. But yes, it is not to take any responsibility away from the planning commission. It's not to say, here you go, planning commission, we put this together. That's not the intent at all. It's to be able to showcase what may need to change so that our 2 members of the steering committee as planning commission members can say, take back to the whole planning, to you and the planning commission, and to say, these are some things that we're seeing based on this data that's coming forth. What do we want to do about it? And having our 2 certified planners then be consultants to you as well.
Well, I'm interested in the remainder of your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh,
Because if I were gonna say anything before you spoke, it was my concern with just what you're talking about. So keep going.
I've spoken with Mike Hanson numerous times of rural community consultants about their services, and I am comfortable with what they have to offer. In fact, based on the information available to us at the time, the mayor has signed a contract, as Carrie mentioned, for them to provide general support to the general plan project. I can see some duplication, and maybe that's misapplied, but in what Allegiant is going to be doing and what RCC would be doing by way of the visioning and things that would be beneficial to the general plan. I question the value of $40,000 for the Allegiant company compared with $22,500 for RCC to do in what seems the same type of work. Maybe it's my ignorance resulting from no one explaining what the difference might be, or whether one or the other should even be part of a general plan process. I've read the grant application, and nowhere does it mention strategic planning as part of the general plan process. So strategic planning was likely not considered when the grant application was submitted. There are a number of different variables when you define strategic planning. So it is not clear to me what Allegiant has in mind to do relative to strategic planning. You've identified that a little bit with some of your comments, Carrie, and I appreciate that. As I understand it, as such, strategic planning may benefit our general plan or it may not. From what I understand about strategic planning, which seems to be more goal-making oriented than general planning, which is essentially a roadmap approach in getting the city from where it is to where it would like to be and keeping the city on the road there. I would think that there would be that RCC could bring some of that into the general plan without seeking the extensive work and anticipated product which Allegiant is proposing to take place at almost twice the cost. Also, in reading through the Allegiant proposal, I can see a possible heavy use of city staff to support their work. However, maybe they do have adequate staff to sustain their effort, but this is not clear to me. If the council decides to award the contract to Allegiant, I would like it understood that the planning commission is the one who will decide what of Allegiant's work and product as well as RCC's work, should be incorporated and included in the general plan. Of course, the council has the ultimate say in all of this, but it is based in part on recommendations from the planning commission. Further, it should be understood that whatever product is generated by Allegiant and RCC becomes a property of the city and cannot be used elsewhere without city approval to do so. Nor do the companies have any proprietary interest in their finished work product, as it is property of the city. The primary concern I have, however, is in follow-up phases, which Allegiant may anticipate, and the cost for those phases. I understand that RCC anticipates 1, maybe 2 additional phases, and I suspect that Allegiant might also. This draft states that it is phase 1, and I'm assuming that additional phases may be anticipated. If additional phases are as costly as this one, there could easily come a point where the grant money is all used up, without the city completing a finished general plan along with the ordinance that are related to it. This is of primary concern, as it was and is expected for RCC to take over responsibility for drafting new city ordinances that might be required to complement our general plan, including codification and creating a better index and keeping our ordinances up to date, as well as outlined under new administrative section of the general plan. In conclusion, with all that due respect to those who spent a lot of time on this initiative and preparing the documents, I feel that the Planning Commission can support the anticipated efforts of the Rural Community Consultants contract, but I have some serious concerns and reservations with the Allegiant contract. We've got potential duplication of work in the visioning process, high costs for much the same visioning product as I understand it to be. Their lack of having performed this service before for another city, potential running out of grant money to finish the project, and possible taxing our city administrative staff beyond their ability to respond. Some of these other concerns I have that can be easily resolved with decisions by the council. But anyway, those are some of the thoughts that I had in going through this material and reading it and trying to decide what maybe the best approach to take would be.
Thank you for your comments. I will address them to where I see fit, and then I'll allow them to address it. Yes.
Just what he just said really rings clearly in my mind, because I would like our city, and no offense to the guests that are with us, I appreciate them being here and explaining their side, but I would like our city to be ran as much as possible, and to future decisions, and especially our general plan to be developed and written by people that live here. These guys live through what they plan,
Right.
and they are very committed like no others.
Well,
So if you're on the planning commission, you have a different look, a different take on every detail. And I think that's an important thing. And I think that's what Wayne is telling us, and he's earned that respect. And we did task him with getting our general plan worked on as soon as he could. And it's due, you know, it's a few years old now, and they've been working on it. And I'd like us not to throw anything their way that would delay that.
Well, it won't, but thank you for
Well,
your.
it could.
Thank you for
It
your
could.
insights. No, I don't think so, but let me address some of his questions so that maybe it will address some of your questions. When this grant proposal went in, you saw the shrink down version. We had pages and pages and pages of our original grant that went in that focused, because as you see, the grant purpose, community visioning projects, transportation master plans, all of these things were part of it. We put all of that in there. When we were then given, we were put on the short list of the cities that rose to the top, then they asked us to shorten it to where we were going to be. And that's what we presented to the council, was that shortened version. But it was not the full vision. Now, when we were first granted that money, I met with Mike right away. He and I have been talking about this for years, about these kinds of all kinds of ideas, these visioning ideas on how does he work with other rural cities? How do we mesh the two? Because our city has never had a strategic plan. And we do go from fire to fire, and we are putting out whatever's in front of us. And as 7 years on this council, I've seen it happen over and over again. I also see the frustrations that our residents have with growth of taxes, not wanting to become like other cities. And yet, if our ordinances allow it, we cannot stop the growth. We cannot control the growth in our current ordinances, right? But if we want to see a different vision for our city to maintain our quality of life and have sustainability, there are some changes that need to be made. Now, do we want to just randomly say, well, I think we should do this? No, we want to have something behind that. And that was the purpose of having data and metrics in place, measurable outcomes that we could showcase. Now, with that being said, when Mike and I met in July, which is when he drafted what you see here, the original contract, we hadn't gotten to the part of, we were talking about this strategic plan and how would it work with a general plan. And Mike was saying, yeah, I've done a little of that, but not a lot. And I could put it in our proposal because we wanted to get it signed right away. Mike is reworking. It's at their in the hands right now to take out the things that he feels is redundant. Mike feels that, I mean, I'm speaking for you, Mike, but I can let you speak for yourself, that Gwendolyn and Delana bring a task and a skill set that he doesn't have. And so the reason for the differences in price too is that level, different levels. Now, again, Mike is going to be on there for all three things, the other two may not. So when you look at the 20% and 30% going forward of the budget and the time, that may all go to Rural Consulting for their services.
Who's World Consulting?
That's Mike.
Oh,
That's Mike.
rural. I'm sorry. I thought you said world.
No,
And I was,
rural.
okay, sorry.
We're getting there though, you know.
And so I think, I'm sure Mike would like to be for the world, a consultant for the world, but with that, that's why it's a partnership. And so originally, before we even had any ideas of what it would be, Mike and Kendall and I met to talk about what skill sets they had and what they wanted to bring to the table and what we might want to bring on as a separate strategic plan. Although they may in the end become one document for the city, they may not. They may stay separate documents. The general plan is your responsibility, whether I got this grant or not. That is yours. If you choose to use any of this stuff to go forward with general plan, great. If not, we'll still have a strategic plan as well to showcase the future. Mike is in the process of rewriting his initial proposal to take out the things that may appear to be overlapping. And that's one of the reasons that his price at this point is lower, because he anticipates spending money in the planning and implementation phase differently than what he's doing now. With regards to city staff, we're planning on doing it all with just ourselves, our steering committee, and these 4 consultants, not utilizing the city staff. Jody and I are working just to set up dates on the calendar, but other than that, city staff will not be, we will not be paying during city staff time. I'm trying to think, I did write down here.
Is there any estimate of projections of costs throughout the whole project?
Well, the costs that were broken, some of those were broken down in this visioning phase. It is the most expensive phase because it is that phase 2 and phase 3 cannot happen without gathering the data to begin with. So it is the most expensive phase. But with that, we will have, it will be more scientific. It will have measurable outputs. We will be able to showcase to our residents and to all of us what we really feel is that vision of our city. And how do we want to go? If we want to just keep status quo and our remaining 600 acres look just like the rest of it, well, then fine, but we will always be raising our taxes every single year. Because that's the reality of infrastructure costs. That's the reality of keeping up cities with big lots, right?
So I gather there's no projection. of the
There
cost.
is no project, well, except for the
The
20%,
first phase one,
30%, yeah,
yes,
just phase
it's
one.
just that.
And then as we gather that, we'll be able to then reformulate what we expect for phase two and what we expect for phase three. And that's why, although Daryl, I appreciate what you said. I mean, I served as planning commission chair. I myself did a general plan years ago, right? And so, but what I realized at that time, we do have the ability to ask like MAG or somebody else for their input, right?
You, back up,
This,
you lost me when you said taxes.
Mhm.
I've had many residents plead with me, please raise my taxes. It's not the way you see it totally.
but
They want the community to be what it is right now
so,
for a few years, the way it is.
but do you understand? That's why we want to do this visioning. So every citizen has the idea to come and say what they want. Yes, we have people who say raise our taxes, they will be heard. But we will also have the widow who says, don't raise my taxes. Or the young family who just barely was here that say, please, why did
Don't
you?
use that as the only threat to have to make a plan for something in the future
So
that we have to, or we'll raise taxes.
what this
That's not the
process,
threat.
there is no threat. What this is to come in to say, does every citizen in our community have a voice? Or is it just the loudest voices? Every single citizen should be able to come to our visioning process, give their voice, so it is heard equally,
It's difficult to do.
but that's what they're
You've
trained
done
in.
it in with CWPP, it was the best run thing ever, so you gotta go to that level and fill that room with 100 citizens.
Why do you think I have two very, very capable?
They are
Consultants.
involved, you gotta get our citizens involved.
That is the point,
That is
is that we will be doing some full-on press to get everyone there. We're giving them 5 different opportunities to come, so they will have a choice of which time to come, whatever fits their schedule. They will be able to give their input.
But again, I think he has more pull getting citizens in that room than strangers from out of town.
Well, they're not gonna be the ones that are asking the citizens. It's going to be us. We're going to collectively be telling citizens to come. It's not the consultants who are going to do the invites, it's going to be us. And so, again, as we look to that, even from the planning part of it, though there is, you know, there is a template for general plans. Even with what Mike and Kendall bring with that certified planner, they're not going to take away our planning commission's responsibility. They're there as consultants on both sides, the strategic plan and the general plan. Again, I think they are complementary documents that showcase our residents, whether they're ones that say no taxes or raise my taxes, fill my pothole, or give me a new park. You know, there's a lot of competing values that go on in our community based on economic status. And we need to be able to identify those, but also represent every single citizen. And that is our duty. And so as policymakers, I think the more data that we have to make those types of decisions, the better it is. Now, from a planning commission standpoint, they have a statutory role. It is the planning commission's role to do the general plan and for us to accept it or send it back or whatever. That is their role. And yet I think that in that is, again, not just saying willy-nilly, we're going to do this, because you may or may not be able to guess what people want with the flat land, right? Do we want that flat land to still be 1 to 2 acres of grasses? Maybe. But other citizens may say, you know what, we want a 55 and older. We've loved Woodland Hills, we want to stay here, but don't we want to hear it from them before we zone it to be that, just because we feel like it's necessary, right? having that input from the citizens, I think is critical. But with that, all of you, the board consultants, heard, I didn't introduce you consultants to Wayne Franson. He is the chair of our planning commission. Would any of you like to address his?
David's got a question.
Yeah, sorry, not so much a question. As much as, first off, I very much feel for Carrie because she's put a lot of effort into this and gotten this grant and done a lot of work. The hard part is that it's all been done prior to really anyone else being involved. And, Wayne's got a fair point that the planning commission is the one. I mean, you can put together a strategic plan, but kind of by definition, that's going to inform your general plan. And so that's going to impact the work that he does. And so he's looking at this and going, man, this cow is already out of the barn and I've got to go try and wrestle it back and try and figure out what kind of guidance we can give this process. And so I feel for Carrie, I also feel for Wayne, and I'm just wondering, what can we do so that this doesn't feel like an out of band process that right now, that's what it feels like. It feels like something got spun up completely out of band of anyone's understanding. And now we're like, okay, what do we do with this and how do we corral it? So
Yeah, thank you, David.
that's how I feel.
When we first started this process with Bob, when he was on council, right, he wanted a community development committee. And so we kind of got that started, and there was a group of us, and he and I were both on it. And there was a group of citizens who also were on it. We started meeting and talking, and Wayne originally started on that, and then he asked Larry to fill in on that. Then when Bob left, at that point, we realized we had no funding to do anything or any responsibilities we just were sitting around talking about what we hoped for, what we wished. And so that year, when this grant came up, we said, let's apply for this grant and just see what we can do, right? We put it into the works. We did, it was a very extensive process. It was many pages of a grant. At the same time, we came back and let Wayne know that I was doing it. At that time, Ted became the liaison to the grant. So he has been on board the whole time, representing the planning commission and helping clarify things as we were going forward. Again, because we didn't know if we were granted this grant, it was just kind of like up in the air. If we get it, we get it. So when it was awarded to us, then coming back and saying we've got this, but we're not sure where we're going with it. We're just like, we can't believe we got it, right? I was contacted because our name was at the top of the list, and all these consultants all over the state started calling me. We want to work with Woodland Hills. We want to work with Woodland Hills. Well, because Ted and I had been working together, and I knew Mike from a lot of different things. I said, hey, Mike, let's talk. We've got this, let's talk. What can we do? And that's when we started talking about the strategic plan and the general plan, and he and I going back and forth. After some time, we brought in Kendall. What do we think? Okay, here is our proposal and what's really in our wheelhouse. And the more we talked and we recognized that we needed a broader scope of work, some of which they could do and some of what they couldn't, we brought in Delana and Gwendolyn. And then the four of them have been working just to give this proposal to get to this place. Again, it's not to dictate or to circumvent anything that Wayne and the Planning Commission are doing, but hopefully it will be to enhance. They can do what they want with the information that is given, but my hope is that whether they use some of that information or not from phase one, we as a council and as a city as a whole recognize the value of the strategic plan as we go forward, because we have some big policy decisions to be made. And if we're only making them based on our anecdotal or our emotional connections to those issues, that's really not wise stewards of our responsibilities of who we are. And
Well,
as Doral
and-
said, you know, we have a lot of citizens, all of the people who are in on it, who are the decision makers, not the gatherers of the information. All four of them are only gatherers and consultants.
Yeah, I mean,
Everyone else who's gonna
Carrie-
make decisions live here. Yes, David.
Carrie, I think we need to be careful, because some of the things that you're saying, and I want to be careful here myself, some of the things you're saying hint that we haven't taken input from citizens in the past, and we haven't gathered that information. We haven't been data oriented in the past, and none of that's true. We've been very data oriented in the past. Our last general plan, we had a citywide survey that we spent weeks developing. We passed it through the city council. We made sure that all of that information was gathered. So I just want to be careful how we're portraying both the efforts of the past and the efforts that we might move forward in the future. And I agree, all of the data and making sure that things are non-emotional and that are based on as much, wide range. I think we all agree with that. We all feel like that's a good direction to go. I think the concerns that Wayne shared are valid, in that he's concerned that he's going to end up with a strategic plan that then is going to, basically very much dictate what kind of a general plan we end up with. And, that's kind of a hard position to put him in.
Maybe Mike, maybe can, Gwendolyn, I know you have your hand up, but Mike, can maybe you express it in a different way?
Yeah, well,
About how you and I have been talking about the differences in envisioning and planning and how they do complement each other?
yeah, so, sorry. So there's always a gap between where you are and where you're trying to be, as was mentioned earlier. I think that when you try to build a plan that's going to close that gap, the most important thing that's going to give you the ROI for the whole initiative is just community buy-in. Now, of course, you're not getting that buy-in without getting the really quality listening. And my understanding, talking to Carrie over the years, talking to Ted, Woodland Hills is one of these communities that has, I call it churn. You have a lot of potential decisions you're making in the very near future. And so that's why we thought, okay, well, let's, we got to build you a general plan. You got to have one by law. You're trying to get it done on your own time and such. We can help with that for sure. But we want to make sure that we've heard everybody. Once you hear, once you really know what the vision is and the mission is, that foundation, you can build very efficiently on the other side. Now, we're not presuming, I love how Carrie's telling us we're going to work through the rest of it. We're not presuming that it's, our work for the rest of it, but we're very interested to see what comes out of the strategic. That's how interested I am to see that phase, because we don't know. We don't know everything the community members are going to want to tell us. And who knows, maybe we need to invest more on the left side when we thought we had to do more work on the right. Sorry, that probably wasn't more succinct.
Well, it was good, and to David's point, I want to make sure that we recognize that all of our planning commissions from the beginning forward have done a lot of work, and we have had it citizen based. We don't have paid planners in our cities, and yet we have tried to gather. I didn't want to imply that we've never gathered data, but have we ever gathered data that has been analyzed to this extent, so that we can use it for various purposes, right? Again, like I said, when I was in charge of doing the planning, the general plan for the city, I relied heavily on the planners from MAC. They came and met with us very frequently to make sure that we were following state code. Because those were things, although we lived in the city, it didn't mean that we were expert planners in all things, that were state statutes. And so to bring in people who can help us from a professional side in our roles and in recognizing what our citizens think, like Mike said, do we think, oh, well, yeah, we think we've heard from enough people that we're gonna turn right, when in reality, maybe we hear from triple of those people and let's turn left. And we could be surprised too. We don't know what's coming out of it, but by having people who know how to gather that and analyze it, I think that's a huge benefit. And that's what I think Mike was saying for his role in planning as a planner, is to have that accurate information to know what to go forward. Again, Wayne, not trying to step on you. That's why I asked you to have, if I could have 2 planning commissioners serve on this, because that is an important aspect of everything. And their viewpoints and their thoughts as we discuss will really weigh heavily on what we're going to do. And the recommendations that might come out of this process, but it's still going to be your process in the end.
And I'm not arguing for that. I just, and there's concern with planning commission that with these 2 groups, we're gonna be duplicating effort. Now, if Mike's gonna go through there and separate that out better,
Yeah,
and so that there is a distinction between the 2 and there's not a duplicative effort, I think that's good. I think we're gonna fool ourselves when we think we're gonna get more than 10 people in here at a time to share their view and vision. We did not have a good track record of having a lot of people come out, even with budgets and things like that. And they're gonna even be less inclined to come out for something like this. So if we go ahead with it, we need to not set our expectations, unfortunately, really high. And we're gonna be relying upon fewer people to, and the council, you interact with people all the time too. So even though they're not here, I think you need to be here to express opinions of some in their behalf in
I'm expecting
just
it.
putting this together.
I'm
Okay?
expecting that they're gonna be here.
So-
And we did decide that we would start in January to give us, myself, and hopefully all of you, time to get that communication out. So people can put it on their calendar, they can pick the date. We've identified, maybe 5 ways that we can communicate with our residents and let them choose. We're hoping maybe even to have them sign up in advance so that we will know who's coming to which section, and then be able to send them a reminder that they have agreed to come, engage in this process. I think that if we, for a better term, not for lack of a better term, market it correctly, and they see that their voice is heard in a different way, I think that we will have more participation. Gwendolyn, I see your hand up. Would you like to address some of Commissioner Wayne's?
Yes, thank you. I want to first just say that I really appreciate that everyone has taken the opportunity to express their concerns. A lot of what I'm hearing are very normal, very natural concerns and questions that organizations have when you bring in consultants, especially Wayne with the Planning Commission, understanding that this front work, this strategy work absolutely will inform the general plan. That's the whole point of it. If it doesn't, then probably something went wrong. And I also want to stress, if the planning commissioners that are involved in this process aren't on board with what comes out of the strategy sessions, and they're like, yeah, no, this is not what our city needs, after hearing from the community, that will mean that we have done something wrong. So the whole idea of this work is really about getting people on board. When we when I really try to differentiate the work that Allegiant Solutions does versus Rural Community, is we're talking about Rural Community is really working really historically, if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, works in the planning and implementation phase, but there really are three phases: strategy, planning, and implementation. And Allegiant works in the strategy planning. So the overlap does come in that visioning piece. And the way we've really separated it is Mike is taking the visioning piece and the interaction from the community that's very one-on-one based. So surveys, phone calls, hotlines, getting information from a website. The approach Allegiant is taking is we are doing more collaborative feedback from the community. So we're asking the community to come into different groups. And if we get 10 people at each of those meetings, that will be very successful. What we'll be asking them to do is really put themselves in the Planning Commission's shoes and say, okay, you have a fixed budget here. How would you like to see it spent? What is your force rank? And in this community, we have a variety of opinions. We have a diversity of thought on, your neighbor may not agree with you. Hopefully at the end, you can come up with a force rank list of priorities that you feel it would be for the community. Even if they walk out and they still don't agree with their neighbor, they may understand their neighbor and go, you know what, I heard from my neighbor and I know why they care about this when I care about this. So those thought leaders help go back into the community, and we do that 5 different times. And so that collaborative data is then used as a tool with the one-on-one data that Mike's team has been collecting and the audits and all of that his team does to help inform a strategy. The Planning Commission would still be the ones to put together the general plan. Absolutely. That is not the work that Allegiant Solutions is in. And that's why we're also right now just bidding on phase 1. What comes out of phase 1, we'll take a look and see if we're invited back to bid on something in phase 2. And if it does, if we are, our work really is still around change management, alignment, clarity, roles, not policy, not building out general plans. I hope that helps provide clarity.
Thank you.
So,
All right.
Delana or Kendall, do you have anything to add for addressing concerns? Or Mike? Yes. I don't know, do you feel like your concerns were addressed enough?
Some more.
Some more, okay, and again, having Ted and Lori on there for their multiple roles in our city. I mean, Ted, both of them as planning commission members, Ted as our engineer, Lori as our treasurer. They bring a wide variety of knowledge to the steering committee. The consultants don't sit on the steering committee, only residents. And those residents were identified a few years ago when Bob was still here. We identified those residents a long time ago. So they will still be involved in this. And so it is community-based. It is about the ability to hear and then to take that knowledge to a different level. We really, I mean, to David's point, we've done surveys and things in the past, but we've never, ever had a strategic plan, and we're 43 years.
But a lot of cities don't have a strategic plan. I'm not saying that's good or bad. They don't. Some of them have a strategic plan and don't have a general plan. They use the strategic plan to help them move forward, establishing goals and ideals and being very specific that way.
I know some don't have a strategic plan. Most in Utah County that do, because I've talked to
Well,
most
I'm
of them.
talking outside of Utah as well.
But yeah, Utah County, but in Utah, every city has to have a general plan. That's state statute. They cannot go and say, my strategic plan is our general plan. Am I correct on that, Mike? They all have to have a general plan.
There's certain elements that definitely have to be in there, yeah.
Yeah. So this is just a supplemental to just take us to a different level of sustainability was my intent of having this grant, to make sure that we only have a limited space to grow. So we might as well be more intentional in our growth, because the growth is happening whether we want it or not. And how can we be intentional? Which means, how can we if we need to update our general plan and update our ordinances for that general plan, how does that make it intentional to enhance the quality of life of our citizens?
Personally, I agree that, we need to be more intentional. I love the deliverables here. And I think more the question is just, how are we getting there? And I think that's what we're discussing, and then we'll make a decision.
My intent is hopefully we can get these contracts approved tonight so that you can start seeing what those deliverables are, that these four can align. They worked really hard to align their skill set to really be a benefit to our community.
Thanks, Carrie, and thanks, Wayne, thanks for your input, and thanks to everyone in Allegiant and rural community for your participation and your input. All right, well, with that, let's move on. I don't know, Doral, unless Craig gave you some information on fire related grants, we'll move on from that. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Item 4.
Can we just squeeze the doc number 4? So I don't have to talk.
Well, here's the thing, Carrie, is that I was talking to Jody a little bit about this before. Do we have sort of not a charter, but do we have some underlying documentation? Because I believe that so in terms of what governs the department.
Right, well, and I think that's with having the vote first, that we can adopt that and then put that together for approval afterwards, but there's no purpose in having the cart before the horse if it's not adopted. So we need to adopt it. There are certain things that when we established the fire department, I don't know if anyone was here before the fire department was established besides myself, and well, Jody was here and Chris was here, but it has to have some organic movement to start. And then if we establish it, you and I and Aaron went to that meeting last week with the county. Afterwards, they called. They were so excited that we had that we are hopefully going to adopt, that we have a department, because they do feel that would be a great benefit to us. And so after we've adopted it, hopefully we can do that as well tonight, then we can go forward with that paperwork that needs to happen.
So that's the way you envision it.
Yes.
Adopt it and then put meat on the bones. Okay, does anybody?
I have no problem adopting it with, just, 1 month deadline to get some SOPs in place or something along those lines.
Okay.
Personally, I think Aaron is an asset that will really help us a lot. And I hate to not do this and lose him for potentially what that benefit would be to the city.
Yeah.
Going over the presentation again today, I think it would be a great addition to the city.
Well, it certainly sounded based on this meeting that it's the direction that
Really
everyone is
excited about
encouraged to
that.
go. Yeah. Anybody else have any comments or questions? All right.
I wish we could see, I know it's not a committee, but it's a department, but I wish we could see more of their agenda. What are they really going to do? What, if it's just the items that Aaron listed, those need to go into some sort of document that I'd like to see before I voted on it.
Well, in reality, when we started the fire department, Chris, you were there. It was like, hey, let's have a fire department, right? There was no list of what it was going to grow into. It was just, hey, we have this idea,
But it
right?
started with people.
It started out
They just came and
kind of.
it grew. It wasn't made a department. We never ever sat down and said, this is a department. We just had volunteers for.
Do we need to add that to the agenda? Make.
The department became the department, and whether eventually became the department. So
Got our charter state department
Yeah.
eventually.
yeah, and they.
Yeah, but it didn't happen at the front. It happened when you had the people and we were already doing it.
Remember, we have the people, we presented.
I don't see a list of names.
We presented that and you approved it as the committee. They're the same people that
Yeah,
will
one
be
of the reasons we're
starting
migrating
this.
from committee to department too.
Yes,
is
it
for
is
the
same
administratively, we don't have.
And
I
so,
know the minutes.
and
the
so with that, Doral, those same people are on board.
Well, could you email us the same people's names, so we'd at least know
Yeah, we can get it right from the
their
minutes, right?
commitment to it, what much
So we
time
can
they'll put in on it. How much time they can put in,
Well, we're
what their
putting,
dedication is.
what we're starting with, I'll tell you right away, we're starting with.
No,
we've
I
already-
want it just in an email, I want it written,
But
so we can follow
residents
up on it.
residents who may be listening or review our minutes
I
can know.
do, yeah.
Is that what we have determined is with the sheriff deputy as well as with Aaron and the committee. Is that we have established that one night a month that they will have a 2-hour spot here.
I just want a roster,
I know,
that's all.
that doesn't come through, I'm telling you about the meeting time. One night a month, which will be a Thursday, which is in between the meetings, the fire department meets here a lot. And so there aren't a lot of times available, but we found a time when emergency management people can meet. Starting with our small group, expanding to larger groups. And that there will be an aspect, there will be at least 2 hours. That will start with the community watch and community preparedness. And as they grow, and as whether it's subcommittees or training or whatever occurs.
Okay, everything you took me so far, you don't need to vote for me on, you just do it. And if it pans out and.
But we
it's
need to
in-
vote on the department tonight, creating
You
the
didn't do it.
department.
Okay.
That's what we want to do because of the grant money that could be eventually, because we don't want to be able to have to use. Right now, emergency management has a very small budget. Now, that's how it started with fire. Fire had a very small budget to start and it has grown, right? Craig gets grants. This by availability to have a department gives us the availability to then apply for grants.
Yeah,
That
I
we
heard
wouldn't
that. I heard
know to do.
that. I did, I heard
Okay.
that.
So I just want to make it clear why we're voting first, so that we can do that SOP. We can grow, we can get grants, we can expand wherever we're needed to go as it progresses. But it's in an infant. It's where we can't imagine where it could maybe possibly go.
It's probably going to evolve over time,
Yes.
like the fire department did.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you, Carrie, again. Now you can take a breather and give yourself some water. All right.
What else do I have in my flask?
All
Can
right.
I get you something?
Item 5,
Red Bull.
financial purchasing and procurement policy. Ben,
Yes,
Ben's been wanting to do this for some time now, and now that, and Chris is even here live to
I
field the
So you
questions.
could throw something.
this is gonna be good. You're prepared, right, Chris?
Yeah, let me just log into the Zoom real quick.
You're good. Well, I'm actually, I'll launch it here, you guys.
Well, because he gave you the presentation to put out, so
Oh,
you want it on the screen, right? Ben?
he's connected.
I'll throw it.
You got it, okay.
You're good.
I think the file you sent me actually copied the slides twice. So It
Did it do?
it might have duplicated. your
Yeah,
presentation,
we'll
but I
figure it
see-
out. Not a problem. Okay, can everybody see that kind of? I don't know if I love having this here.
You can grab that. and share it.
Now we're talking. Okay. This is a lot of information, so I'm just gonna apologize beforehand. So I don't wanna take up a ton of time. My goal is to have more of a discussion and see what do we have currently in the ordinances for financial policies and procedures. Get us all on the same page and then having a quick discussion at the end, talking about what are some of the gaps that we're seeing? How can we fill these gaps with potential amendments to our financial ordinances, and we'll move from there. So if this will progress, there we go. So I'm just gonna jump through all of the different ordinances. I'm not gonna read everything. I think we'd all die of boredom for that sake. But it's all here, the presentation, I've sent it to Jody, it'll be in the minutes, I can send it out to any of you if you want, but it's basically copy and pasted codes. So it basically is talking about what do we do when we have certain things, here's budget officer, powers and duties, kind of what our treasurer does, what our finance director does, our purchasing agent. The fun part about this is the mayor has a lot to do. You're amazing, man. Requests, estimates, prohibitions, interest, gifts, rebates. It's all here for you to review, like I said. Formal contracts, what do we do in those cases? And I've kind of done a quick resolution or a Cliff Notes version of some of these. So right here for the formal contracts. When we're, anything over $40,000, there's a formal written contract with the lowest and best bidder. We need to publish the proposal, when required the law, so on and so forth. There's just a lot of stuff. Open market procedures, what do those look like? Emergency purchasing, so we have all those, and so here's kind of where I want to spend a lot of our time. It's just a quick summary of the high points of all of those slides we just slammed through. Unapproved transactions are the personal responsibility of individuals whom deviate from policy. So if any of us do something that's outside the bounds of this policy, that is on our personal pocketbooks. So let's not do that. The mayor is the budget officer, or he can appoint, or she, but in this case, he can appoint someone to be the budget officer for the city. We need to have an annual audit. The city council must approve a yearly budget. The financial director can sign for anything 1,500 or less. The mayor is purchasing agent or can appoint someone else with council approval. The purchasing agent must approve all transactions. City council can waive compliance when city officials or officers have a financial interest. Greater than $40,000 needs formal written contract with lower or greater bids or better bids. Yes, or no.
Purchasing agent and budget officer, are they the same person?
In our city, yes.
Okay,
Unless the mayor has
okay.
delegated that. Now, as far as I'm aware, and Chris, just interrupt me if I speak untruths. But the budget officer, he can appoint just by his own authority. For purchasing agent, the council would have to ratify or agree, vote on him signing somebody to be purchasing agent.
So since I've been in this position, the mayor's always held both of those,
Okay.
and then it's just dictated to staff when to purchase things.
Okay. So greater than 40,000 needs to go out for a contract. With that, the bid invitation must be submitted in newspaper for 5 days or whatever the current method of communication is. I don't know if anybody's using a newspaper anymore. For 5 days and then posted in a public place. And then the city council must award that contract. For less than 40,000, but greater than 10,000, they should be receiving at least 3 different competitive bids when possible. And that needs to be attempted rigorously. And then emergency purchasing, the mayor may authorize the lowest bid contracts in time of emergency, but must after present all the documentation to justify the expenditure for ratification and inspection of residents and the councilors. And then here's where I just wanted us to talk and see if we've, identified any holes. What would we need to add to this to make a more robust financial policies and procedures? So for example, we have a gap right now between Chris's authority of 1,500 and 10,000. We don't have anything in our ordinances to fill that gap.
Didn't we change it to 5,000 a time back?
For myself or the mayor?
Any city official, I thought it went from 10 to 5.
No, and we
I'm
were
dreaming.
trying to figure out when this happened, so we think it was back in 2005, and Mayor Benson was. The mayor, that the mayor was given authority of 10,000, and that's 1,500. And the public works, I think it was, I can't remember the gentleman's name, was 500 at the time. And we can't find that anywhere in writing. We've been acting off of that for 20 some odd years.
So Mayor Larson
But-
wanted it to be 5 instead of 10, and I don't know if that
And
was
I don't
changed.
remember.
Okay.
It was discussed, I found in minutes where we like discussed that we were looking at doing something. Unfortunately, that was February or March before he passed away and nothing was ever after.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ben, just reading a couple things real quick, so I was able to go through
Please.
tonight. 63 G in the financial code for the state of Utah lost $50,000 for your RFP. We've got 40,000 there. 40,000 would probably might for RFP for your people.
No, it's under, because they was under.
But if they go phase two, even if it's $10,000, we have to go to RFP because that would put them over $50,000. We just gotta kind of just be mindful of that when we're doing this. But I would suggest we look at 63 G and up to 50,000, which is the state code they did that years ago. Also, the director of finance does have the 1,500. We have to codify what amounts we're going to do for the other employees. I'd recommend we add the treasurer in there now to also be able to approve up to $1,500. And I'd up that just a little bit more. $1,500 was given at the time because of utilities were raising the prices. So we don't always have to go to the mayor to have me sign off. I think the approval at that time was $1,000. We don't always have to go to the mayor and have the mayor sign off on the $1,000 utility bill. They would have to pay regardless. And so I would recommend taking that up to maybe $1,800. Or even 2,000. But also give the treasurer that same ability. Going through this too, you can see there's a conflict in this codification versus what the employee manual was written last year. So the job descriptions are not the same. You probably take the employee manual, incorporated into this. And the employee manual was done differently than because of qualifications and skill set. And I'm sure something else is going to come up as we're thinking about this.
Wayne,
I attended quite a few commissioner meetings down in Carbon County. And they had the practice, and I don't know if it was a requirement or just something they chose to do. Where something went out on a request for proposal, they would open those in the public meeting. They wouldn't do it separately. They would do it in the public meeting, so there was no, they have them in a sealed envelope, so there's no question, and they'd read the amount, and then, of course, there'd be a discussion about it. I just mentioned that.
Yeah. The last time I did an RFP, which was the firework, was a big, the big one that was open in public. It's nice to be able to-
Anytime you go out for public bid, which would be in our case, over 100,000, it has to be a public
And
opening.
you held the public
And-
meetings when we did.
When we did the mitigation,
Mitigation.
project there, it's the water line work, it's all public.
Yeah.
Openings, and you, same thing with bids. Now, professional services are a little different. You don't have to do public openings for those, because you're evaluating those differently, but for
And security, I mean, there's certain things that we don't have to do.
construction bids and stuff like that. The cities have to have a public opening, and a lot of funding agencies require that as well. And we did for like all mitigation work and water line work, they were all public openings.
And they did all that, right? We didn't.
Yeah, we do all that.
Yeah, so that was-
Well, the engineering groups usually do all that. They'll handle it for the city, unless the cities, some cities that are larger have their own groups that do that, but generally, like most of the cities, smaller cities we work with, we just handle it all.
And I believe we can get rid of the phrase, and we can kind of phrase lowest bidder wins. That you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Most qualified bidder wins. So you can have somebody come in at 40,000, you need somebody come in at 60,000. If they've got more experience, more qualifications, they've done 15 more cities, whatever, their qualifications are more.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to go below bid. And in fact, I think most people are kind of getting away from that verbiage now, because
The
they're
state-
finding that you pick a low bidder and sometimes you pay more by the time you're done with the project and the next guy.
One of the things we try to do in the city is use the pre-approved people through the state of Utah through the purchasing department. Anybody that's pre-approved the state of Utah, even if it's $10 million, we don't have to go to a bid, we can go directly to the state.
That's in state code, right?
Well, yes, it's through the state, I think, treasury department.
Well, that's in the state ordinance
Mm,
or law,
I'm
or do
sure
we need
it's-
to put that in our ordinances?
We'll have to find the verbiage on that.
Okay.
But it's a nice option. A lot of times they're more money. We have to think about the cost of RFPs, attorneys. And when you're doing these from a state contract perspective, their warranties and some of their things that they give to the city are longer and better.
Okay, what do we want to do for that gap? Between, now potentially the 2,000 to the 10,000.
I would recommend putting the mayor even higher, but that's just me. We're a small city. We don't have that many expenses that go that much higher, but some people may not feel comfortable doing that. And 10,000 might be a nice number, when we're talking, that's one of the things we discuss is the price and would you go to council, or not go to council? What approvals do we need?
What are your thoughts there? Yeah, it's your choice, really.
well,
What kind of responsibility and accountability do you want on your shoulders?
You want to go back to that slide where it said it was my personal responsibility? I would say let's have it at $200. I mean, if 10,000 has been the understanding, I mean, it doesn't even come up all that often. I would be comfortable with that. So if that's what it's kind of been an unspoken practice.
We got two departments. You got the water roads that are 90% of the time going to be way higher than that, and you got the fire department who usually falls under that. So, you know, Corbett's, unfortunately, all his money has to go to bid. Unless you do state contract, because he's going to be over thresholds. But as we were just talking, he gets multiple bids anyways, just because he's going for lowest price.
But you're saying there is a gap, right? Is that?
Well, if we say in here that you have a $10,000 signing limit, that fills that gap, as far as my understanding goes.
It doesn't look like it's in anything in writing that we can find.
Correct. It's just it's basically making the status quo
Okay.
in ordinance, yeah. What about department heads? What can they sign off of within the budget?
Well, I recommend putting Corbett up the same as the director of finance. I mean, his expenses are just getting too expensive.
So $2,000 for,
Yeah, and anything above, we go.
so
to
that would be,
Or Corbett and Craig, because Craig does the fire and some park stuff,
and potentially Aaron as well, right?
potentially.
Aaron, if we make a new department, he would be a department head. Now, he wouldn't have any money, so he wouldn't have a budget,
So
so,
it
But potentially,
yeah. But if we
potentially
get
down the road,
grants, then-
if we're looking at policy and procedures going forward, that would. There would be somebody who would have a director responsibility over a potential budget and grant money.
You might want to be a little careful on that, just because who's Aaron? What's his last name?
Hillary.
We just don't know, you know, you just might want to put that a little lower first.
Well, if we don't put it per person, right, because right now, policy and procedure isn't based on the person, it's based on the role that they have,
Correct.
so.
And it would, they'd have to have it in the budget, right?
Yeah.
We would have already had to approve it. So this just allows them to,
So even if it's in the budget, we still follow this.
perfect, yes, and that's what I'm saying, this. Nobody rogue could go spend more than, up to 2,000. Without going, because the purchasing director, if I'm correct, the purchasing director. Or whatever is the title is, has to approve all transactions.
And maybe we have to put a threshold on that, because you don't want to have to approve a $50 chain of cow ranch. You know, or a quart of oil.
Okay, so what is that? So purchasing. Officer. Must sign off on all what number?
Doesn't he sign all the checks anyway?
No. I do $2,000 to 10,000. It's from 1 to 10,000,
Over $2,000?
yeah. But after 10 grand, we gotta go bring it to the council anyways. At that point, it's a public hearing, you guys have voted on it. That kind of sets it in stone.
Wonderful. Okay, anything else? Anybody have any other financial concerns?
No, thanks for doing this. So are you going to put together some draft language then? Is that kind of the way you're envisioning?
I'll work with Chris on this.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. Remember, got an audit going on in there.
When he's done with the audit, we'll, if he gets home, I'll ping him and together we'll make sure. So it's
thanks for doing that.
included.
And does that address, I mean, you and I spoke earlier, I mean, does that address the primary concerns that you have? I mean, so we.
Yeah, predominantly, my biggest gap was that 10,000 number, right? That gap of. If we're spending $9,000, our ordinances didn't allow for how we conduct that business. And now it does. It will if we can get these.
And we need to put splitting in there. I can't remember what they call it in the state rule, but if something comes to 20,000 with one company, the mayor, none of us should authorize. I should authorize them to give me 15 POs to break it under the $20,000 threshold. There's a terminology for that, but we'll do that. Way.
So no splitting.
And Chris, you and I need to talk about the implications of this on legal matters, because it does seem that, I mean,
We had a lot of legal bills.
yeah, and so we need to have that conversation.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't, when we open the budget up in January, council should just be reporting about 450,000 period. And then, we don't have to keep coming back. I mean, we know last bill was 50 grand. I can't remember if we got the new bill yet, but
17.
16 or 17.
$5,000 in copies. Which we're
Which they are looking into.
good.
we just keep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Probably not gold leaf. Okay, thanks, Ben.
Yes.
Oh, any other input from the council on that?
No, I think it's good.
Good. Item 6. Ted, West Loafer.
No, we're gonna do it.
It's a tough crowd tonight. Ted.
Yeah, I know, I don't know if I have to come out here tonight or not. Yeah. Well, now that you've increased all the spending limits, just write a few checks and we're done for you. Just write me 100 checks for 2,000 and we're good to go. So.
He's a quick learner.
Yes. So last time the council, I'm just gonna pull up my numbers here. We had talked about West Loafer and the cost of West Loafer being around 200, so well, I'm gonna put this in terms of pigs tonight, so we're gonna talk pigs here. Because that's kind of what started last time. So last time we talked about doing West Loafer for a cost roughly of about 289,000, 290,000 for the city's proportionate share of that, right? That cost was to do a partial, what I would call a partial rebuild of the road. So we were going to excavate 4.5 feet or 4 feet off, put it on side slopes, and then rebuild out some good structural base, put in some geofabric and give us a decent road, not the full rebuild, but a decent road. So with that, then the city's interested in looking at what are some different options for redoing the road. And I haven't reviewed this with Corby yet, because this is like hot off the press, just as like 5 o'clock. We went back and looked at the original geotech report and some of their recommendations on the road, and then looked at, some different options of what we could do looking at geotech reports. So we looked at basically 3 different options and the cost of those options. And we looked at what I'll call the best of the best, a full rebuild of it. We're giving you the bacon and sausage, right? That was tear out basically all the fill that's been put in and rebuild the entire thing. And so we looked at that cost, and that cost came in. And when I say cost, a total cost of about 655,000. And then the city's proportionate share is about 49% of that. What it breaks down to. And I didn't break that out, but 653,000 is what it came out. So then the city's proportionate share of that's about 49% of that cost. So roughly 50% of the cost, right? So what's that, 376,000 would be a cost to do for the city to redo everything. Like full rebuild on the road. Second option is the one we talked about last time, right? We're gonna put some lipstick and makeup on the pig and do the best we can with it. And that's to take out the 4 feet and rebuild 4 feet of it back. And this was kind of the LEI original design, put 2 layers of geogrid in it and give us a decent road, not full rebuild, but a decent road. And that was the cost we talked about last time, where the total cost of the project is roughly around 594,000, and the city's proportionate share is about 289,000 of that. And that was the option last time that we talked
Did that
about.
option include fixing the culvert?
Yes, replacing the culvert, actually.
I mean,
All these options include replacing the culvert, existing,
that second option,
289,000.
and that's without engineering, right?
It's without engineering. That's
Without
correct.
engineering.
And then we looked at what we're calling option C, which is we're just going to give you the pig, right? At least a something. No lipstick, just going to give you the pig. We'll throw a little lipstick on it. So this option is basically to just go down and take out the amount of fill we would need to put back a subgrade and base course, which is about 1.5 feet of the existing material. And you would take that out, put it on the shoulders, And then we would put back in that same amount, about 18 inches of a structural subgrade. We put in 1 layer of geofabric with that, and then some asphalt. This is kind of attempt to do what they call bridging the bad materials. You're just kind of trying to bridge it with something. And so at least it's something probably a little better than just asphalting what's there. It'll bridge it, last longer, you know, you're obviously gonna be a little more maintenance down the road with that, but that cost came out to right around, the city's proportionate share is right around 260,000 for that one. So roughly about a $35,000 savings,
So what is the whole cost on that?
536,000.
536.
Now, we also looked at a couple other things that could be some trade-off cost to maybe reduce it, you know. For example, if we, one of the ideas Corbett had, which is a valid idea, is we've got right now 2 inlet boxes. We got curb and gutter, 2 inlet boxes that pick up the stormwater, we drop it in a culvert or a culvert, a pipe, and then we put it back in the drainage and send it down the drainage. If we were to do something differently, we looked at a couple different things. One, do we keep the curb and gutter there? Put a cut in the curb and gutter and then just build a little gravel ditch down to the drainage rather than the inlet boxes and pipes. We just let it flow down a little ditch. That could save us about 10,000 there, but that would be a shared cost between the two participating entities. So 5,000 to the city savings roughly. We looked at not putting anything in and just kind of reseeding the site, putting in flat curbing like we have now up in Thousand Oaks, and tip the road one direction and let it go off and just run down into the drainage. Same, it's probably about the same savings, probably about 10,000, because you still have to reseed that side hill and probably put something there to keep it from eroding while everything's being reestablished. But because so we could save, you know, there's little things like that we could save a few thousand more, 5,000-10,000 more, but it's kind of what we've come up with. The additional engineering is about 15,000 to finish up the engineering on that, get all the big documents ready to go out, and then get contractor selected.
So all of those options. The engineering for that is the same price?
Yeah. Because it really doesn't change a lot of what needs to be done in the design.
Yeah.
It's just ultimately what we end up. In fact, some of them that where we reduce costs may actually take a little more time in engineering, but that shouldn't be that much more. It's going to change the cost really, because then we have to start pulling stuff out of the design that's already there, like storm drain stuff and whatnot.
Chris, how much money do we have ready to go?
Right today,
Yeah.
let me check some already.
Because we did have 220, but didn't we take some out of that?
Sorry, really busy reading election results. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I keep checking.
Oh, dear.
Usually we switched it in years past, but
So I keep checking my phone, sorry, because I'm just checking results. I keep getting like little. You're getting little buzz alerts, like it keeps buzzing me.
Wait,
One thing we need to do too is probably discuss these options with Summit Creek. And see if they have any druthers or. Because their decision will be a driving force as well as to if we're looking to do this together.
yeah.
220 and some change.
Now, in those options, we've got a 15%, I call it 15% contingency. Which is basically, we figure out the cost and we add 15% to it just to cover anything we might have missed or increase in material costs. And these days, sometimes even that we can't keep up with pricing.
And I mean, this is kind of a lump sum deal too, right? I mean, it's not like we can do 180,000 in one budget cycle and then the other, whatever, we end up going together 80,000 in the subsequent budget cycle, right? I mean, it's kind of, we gotta go all in.
I think that'd be the best approach to go all in. It would be the most efficient, both money wise and construction wise to do. You know, you could do something like redo the culvert and build the road section back with road base and then just leave it at road base for a year. And then come back and asphalt it the next year or something like that.
I think we was talking about maybe doing it in April, May, and then asphalting in July. That we transition.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and that's something that could be done as well, because if you, depending on the time of your bid, I mean, you could even, I mean, right now. I mean, it would take us probably a couple months to get everything out to bid to contractor, I mean, and then start in March, so. I mean, you'd probably be looking sometime in June before you'd have someone. Close to being, working on it or working through it, so it would happen throughout the spring and summer. So you could
But I mean, if
possibly.
we could
split
pass
it by
some things, not tonight. But, and then we're not meeting next.
Till December.
Yeah, we're not meeting until December, so if we were to make a decision on which option we wanted to select. We could start making immediate progress toward. I mean, like you say, in bidding it out or whatever steps need to be taken that would be appropriate to take. In the winter months anyway, I guess, I mean, we'd be making progress and we could be moving toward. Something that's kind of shovel ready in around April, and then like Chris was saying, then after. We get our new budget, then finishing it up that summer.
Yeah.
Let's bid it out with asphalt separately.
Yeah, there's a couple of things we thought of doing too, and we can do that. It's also timing the project, like even if it were approved tonight, it would take a couple of months to finish up the engineering, get the bid documents ready. And then it takes about a month and a half to get a contractor through the bidding process and a contractor selected and on board and a contract with them. So you'd be sometime in February, 1st of March, where we'd probably be through that process.
Yeah, but as long as we can
And then you're ready
make
to
a
go.
step forward, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I don't like, is just circling the bowl.
Yeah.
I think there is.
Did we talked last time a little bit about maybe doing a private, collaboration with Summit Creek to see if you guys got bids and if they came in lower?
We have not bid anything on that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering, I don't know what that looks like if developers get better rates or because they're,
Or do you have a feel from your management, what direction? You might want to take, I mean, you're a part of this and
Right.
I feel guilty dictating your price, and so I'd like them to have more of a say if we could.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this
We
is
could go play that road.
the place to get into the weeds on this, but I mean, there's a lot of questions involved if we were to go out together. Does it need to be a written agreement before we even start so that we understand where the money's coming from, where it's going, who's making decisions? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
who's managing it?
Right.
What happens if we go over? There's a lot of variables here to make.
Right,
some
or if we
complexity.
just treat them separate, it could be the same contractor, but we hire him for our half and you hire him for your half, but he's. So it's completely separate as far as getting paid. But it's the same contractor working out the same drawings. So then that eliminates us having to come into some sort of an agreement, and the legal aspects of, I don't know, there's.
Yeah,
If you do a GP contract, guarantee maximum price contract and this kind of thing, and then have them bond if it goes over. Possibility,
Um,
and that would lock in the price. Yeah, alleviate some of that.
yeah, usually when you get a guaranteed max, you're doing something like a design build or something like that. Usually it's when you go out for just your typical bidding process, you get the low bidder right, and then you just. Hopefully, there's no surprises during construction that add to that cost through change orders, because that's one thing you always, I mean, these are costs, if everything goes fairly smooth, they run into something unexpected. Then that even just increases the cost more, and that's why we put some contingency funding in there, but. On the water line project, we did what we call the design assist process. Where we could bring a contractor on board during the design phase. And then they help build the pricing. So by the time we get through the design, we know the price, and then, okay, do we move forward with this? That costs a little bit of extra money just because you've got to pay that contractor for his time during that process, but. So there are things to do that can help with it. The other thing we've thought about too, we talked about is. We could even put bid alternates together. So you bid a base bid, which is maybe option C. But then you add an alternate in there to include some additional things that would take it to the option B level. So that if you get really good pricing, you can then add those alternates in, say, okay, well, we got some good pricing, let's add this in now to the contract. And we already have the price for it, so we know we can add it in. We can do, things that you can maybe remove from the contract the same way. You can have a base bid and then you have bid alternates and, yeah, we really can't afford this, let's maybe take this out, get rid of the lipstick. Yeah, lipsticks off, stuff like that. So there are ways where you can work this out through the bidding process to get pricing, but then have ways to manipulate that. Manipulate's not the right word, but add or subtract alternates. Additive or subtractive is what they call it, deductive alternates. But,
And so what would that like, so what I would prefer would be our next council meeting. If Summit Creek could send its delegate, whether that's you, Ben, or whether, and whatever information you would need in advance of that. I would like to see next meeting, we make a decision on which option we're gonna go with. Now, as far as how that's bid out. I mean, I don't really have any thoughts on that. The objective is to try to lock as low a cost as we can, but preserve this maximum flexibility, I guess.
yeah, and really the key thing is, figure out what option we really are serious about pursuing. Because that affects the engineering, right? Because we have to go finish the engineering design, and whatever option we go with is what we design to. Right now, option B was kind of the design that's been done to a certain level. It's not all the way done, but so if we go to option C, we just have to make some adjustments to the design and then finish it out. So those things are.
So if next meeting, we could lock in which option we want, then those other pieces of it. We can kind of tease out in subsequent meetings, but we're locked in, at least we know what road we're gonna build. Hopefully everyone's on the same page on that. How does that sound?
So just a couple of thoughts that we've had, and I don't know if this is accurate, so don't shoot me over this, but. So Summit Creek and that West Loafer Road, whenever it was built or started to be built, it was built off of a set of drawings. I think the LEI drawings from however long ago. And so that was Summit Creek's expectation, was to build to those drawings. And there's money allocated for that. Now the drawings are being updated and we're looking at 3 different levels and each one of those goes up in cost. So is Summit Creek expected to follow that same percentage along with those better roads, or are we only contributing the amount based on the original drawings?
So I would say, if you committed to those original drawings, maybe that should really drive our decision too. I mean, that should be.
And I don't know, like, there's a lot of history that I don't know. I don't want the city just in their mind thinking it's always gonna be 51-49% for every option.
Right.
Or maybe Summit Creek only expected to do a certain amount based on original drawings. And now the drawings are changing. Does that make sense?
But what would you do, like the storm drains change, and they had to change that and it cost you more now in your next phase, and
Yeah.
I mean that.
There was a bond posted,
Right.
and there's no way, I mean, that is so low.
It's like 25 grand or
Yeah.
something.
So
Yeah.
you,
Yeah, and I don't know those original drawings, I guess the original. We're working off the LEI ones that were done like, 2 years ago? Back when we were doing the water line project.
Okay.
We had LEI put some drawings together to say. What could we do to rebuild the road, to have a decent road, but not, not go full replacement.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where this option B is at, and that's what the LEI drawings, I think
yeah,
we've looked at
2 to 3 years ago.
2 to 3 years ago. I don't know if there was something before that.
Particular
No.
set of drawings.
Not to this, a long time ago, there was. But that is so far surpassed that.
So it might be worth it. I don't want to suggest meetings because we'll have plenty of meetings, but just to help make this decision, not here, but get more, management to get involved and say, okay, where are we really at?
Yeah.
And what's Summit Creek gonna contribute, so you guys can make your best decision.
No, I agree. I think that, I mean, we don't want to show up and then everyone is surprised.
Yeah.
Where everyone else thinks.
And we can find out for sure where that bond sits. I don't really know. Well, I know it now, but I think you said it expired.
And what's the approach to, I mean,
Yeah.
Do you look at it from Woodland Hills taking the lead, getting it done, or does Summer Creek take the lead and get it done and the city reimburses them? How do you approach that? I mean, that's a few things we probably had to figure it out before next meeting.
If you reach out to us, or I can work with Ted or someone to set that up, we can do it as soon as possible.
So it's Steve Dicker being involved.
Yeah, I think that would be, if you're okay with that, Ted, and then just if you could maybe. Make sure that, you know, Summit Creek's position as to, you know, what it agreed to originally
Yeah.
is, you know, and so if we have that understanding. You know, at least we can know what, where to go from there.
Okay, who should we?
And maybe we get the chase. I have an email from Steve today, so we're trying to get a meeting. He says he's busy until the 21st. So the 20th, so on the 25th, he said, right? Friday or Thursday. He said he's available that week, so maybe if whoever's gonna be in that meeting, check our schedules and just go right to him and say, how about Monday at 3 o'clock?
Well, I know that that's Lori and you, right, Chris?
Yeah.
I will be out of town that week, so,
Well, as far as the roads, who would be in that?
Ted and probably Wayne. Because we need to discuss the
Or-
bond, if we do that at the same time, let's. Get it just done.
So do you want to do, should we start the 21st at
You took the time,
1 o'clock?
sounds good.
You want me, you text Steve,
What was that date?
21st at 1 o'clock?
11/21, 11 a.m.
Yeah.
1 p.m.
1 p.m.
Right,
What would I say? Oh, yeah, 1 p.m.
1 p.m. I think you said.
When was that?
Monday,
11/21?
well, if you need me, I'm only a phone call away.
I'm open then.
What's that?
Oh, I just said I'm open on that times.
All right, so
Thank you.
the purpose of that meeting then will be to just assess where we are, and then we can report back next council meeting, and hopefully at that point, just make a decision as to the road we want.
I think that's good. We have to work together, we can't work separately.
Right.
Yeah, it's not that's a $350,000 road and say, hey. Match it.
Well, we can say it.
I think that might negate all the goodwill we created.
I might change it, yeah.
We're working on this.
Thanks, Ted, that's very helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
For all the options. Well, what's the price of a grand moral?
We'll let you plow it.
If we don't plow it either.
Oh, just gravel.
It's just gravel.
Back up and salt it.
Okay.
All the teenagers would be like. Can I ask a question while they're looking, Ben? My text that I've been sending of the pictures, whose trucks are those?
What are we doing?
On
Me then or
that-
this Ben?
Ben, you.
You, on that section of road, I'm getting a complaint from one of the neighbors about all the trucks and rocks. and
Yeah. So I gotta plead a little bit of ignorance. I know it's a builder in Summit Creek, but as far as getting approval to put their rocks there, I'm assuming they reached out to you guys? They reached out to me. Okay.
Cause her concern is that it literally goes to the right to the border of the end of the road.
No, the dirt, the rocks only. I don't know who's done with the dirt.
Is there dirt being dumped there now too?
And just concerned because when we get a lot of snow, there needs to be somewhere to push the snow.
Dirt right up on on Summit Creek Drive or on the,
It's on low.
on Lower,
It's lower.
but right up. Right, but right where it meets Summit Creek is where that dirt's being done. Is that,
Yeah,
On the Summit Creek side or on the?
I got a picture, it's.
I was pretty sure it has been right here, yeah.
I would imagine it's the lower side since it's Kathy that's.
It's in front of, it's Kathy Anderson's house.
Oh, right.
It is, was a pile of dirt dumped on her side of the dirt of the country.
Right where the road ends,
On her side.
yeah,
No, I saw the pile of dirt, I couldn't tell.
rocks,
what type.
and there were trucks parked right there, and she's just concerned with the snow and the snow plows and. And it's right there, like there needs to be some room for the snow to be pushed. That was, and she reached out to me, so I'm just asking, if you're ready to find out.
Yeah, I don't know if he's dumped on the dirt.
I'll take a look at it, I'll see if I
And
can.
we can talk about it tomorrow on our staff meeting. Okay, all right,
When the next vote will be done.
speed limit on Summit Creek Drive below gate, would that have been Deputy Dudson? Was not here or?
He wanted us to do that,
Yeah, it's got no sign down there.
Right,
we can't enforce it.
So is it
So,
just a matter
if anybody-
of, are we saying yay, put a sign up?
Well, yeah, what number do you want? I have a feeling, but.
85.
Yeah.
Not that.
that's what you go, that's what you need.
I mean, the first we did a traffic study, with Jeremy Searle did a traffic study for us when we were determining like in front of here to do 25, and I don't know, do we need that, or can we just say 25, 35, whatever? You know, because it's. residential, but it's
Standard is-
speed.
People will typically drive within 5 to 8 over the posted. So the bigger that number is, the bigger that overage is going to be, not bigger, but the larger number that will be. I don't know, I asked Corbett today if anybody would lynch me too hard, you know, if we made it like 30 up Woodland Hills Drive and 25 throughout the rest of the city, and I think Janet would.
Is it 30 or 35 now?
It is 35 now.
Okay, so leave it 35, and I didn't say to the bottom of some, it's the same, but. It's not where the houses are, but if you're where the houses are, it needs to be 25.
Right. For me, my only issue is people, like coming up Woodland Hills Drive, because that's the only really instance I have background on. Is they take that 35 all the way through the city. And they're not slowing down at the fire station.
I do.
You do because of experience.
Definitely.
But nobody else. I've even had somebody one day I was turning, because I turn right here on High Line multiple times a day. I had somebody who was so mad at me driving 35 up Woodland Hills Drive because my wife's car. That's top speed of Woodland Hills Drive. I turn, and when somebody is tailing me, I drop it directly to 25 once I hit that sign, just to let them have it. I
You're
guess.
that guy.
I'm that guy.
Yeah.
And because my car's transmission needs me to cool down. But once we turned the corner, right in front of he gunned it past me. And I was right about to turn. And so I just think.
They start passing.
There's issues from a traffic standpoint. So I would be more inclined personally, long story short, is probably to go 25 on that side. Because we've already got people speeding through Summit Creek Drive. I don't think we reward them with a higher speed limit. But I'm typically not a stick-to-the man person on speeding, I kind of am. I'd love to hear Ben's thoughts as well.
And those are, I mean, those homes, I think, sort of uniquely, I mean, they're really close to the road too. I mean, even Woodland Hills Drive, where it's 35, I mean, you've got a pretty decent buffer zone that I
Yeah.
think can sort of.
The
just
fourth
like that,
season,
those are-
they're right.
Yeah, they're just right there.
So that's what I'm saying, if it's residential, it needs to be.
In the
25.
morning and evening, you've got, or afternoon, you've got school buses there and letting kids off, and that's another thing I think you need to factor into the decision.
Yeah.
With coming up there, going down.
Yeah, if it's residential, I think that's the standard, yeah, Jody.
Can I remind the council that Summit Creek and their residents there came and asked the council some time ago for a portion by their community pool and that to be 25 miles per hour. Is there a reason why now you'd go ahead and change it for 4 seasons, but you weren't willing to change it when they came?
What is it now?
It's not 25.
It's just 30. Is it 30 for Woodland Hills or Summit Creek Drive?
I'd be okay with changing
I'd
it
love to
to
see a 25 across
If
the,
that's what the residents want, I think it should be.
but I don't know if that's
Dave has a
over
comment.
here.
Yeah, I'm mooting him.
Dave?
Yeah, it's 30 through there. The one thing I would recommend is that we drop whatever verbiage we're using around the gate. Because that may or may not be, the density demarcation in the future. And so I would recommend that we, basically, if we're going to set a different speed limit, we do it based on the density that's currently existing on the road, knowing that we can always change it later as things become more dense and as we need to move it.
Does anyone that's been on the council a while, when you have set speed limits, I mean, is there a traffic study that's required? I mean, is it
We
something?
can set whatever we
You can
want.
set whatever you want, okay?
We did one last time, and that's when we, especially when we removed the stop signs at Broad Hollow and Woodland Hills Drive. We had Jeremy conduct a traffic study just to make sure,
Right.
because we were concerned that people would not stop, or they were used to stopping, but eventually we put up those other signs that said cross traffic doesn't stop. And that seemed to alleviate that, but he was talking about that flow of traffic that went through there, stopping and starting again was not beneficial for Woodland Hills Drive. I don't know, I agree that probably 25 is it, but we have an expert in our city, maybe it would be nice to ask him.
Does the planning commission want to think about it? Is that?
Well, that's how you really feel.
What does Officer Wayne say?
All right.
Just to be clear, Jeremy did not do a traffic study. A traffic study is a lot more than what he did. He just kind of, he basically brought study materials that showed
Yeah.
that having four-way stops in the middle of roads didn't make any sense. So it wasn't really an official traffic study, which that costs quite a bit more money to do.
Yeah, you're right. He didn't do a full-on study, but he used his expertise to then, and that's when we did change the with that, and also the speed limit here in front of the city center. That's when we changed that.
Could we pull the data from the sign? So if Craig can pull up and Bluetooth over all of the traffic data off of the sign in Summit Creek, I think that would help us also have a little bit of data on Summit Creek Drive.
Yeah, I mean, he's recovering from surgery at the moment. but I'm
Yeah,
sure he-
well, we have till December,
Yeah,
the second week of December to
yeah. so
readdress it,
just-
if we table this for till then.
Yeah, I mean, we can't vote on anything tonight anyway, but
Ben, you're so nice and caring. I love it.
That's sarcastic, David.
It might be sarcasm.
I thought it was a compliment. I got one of those from David. Wow, they're rare. Me neither, so. I didn't deserve one either.
okay, so you want data regarding just speeds through 4 seasons?
It's nice to know how.
But just Summit Creek Drive, because it's just the one sign, it's in, where is that? Is that like Chris's house?
On Summit Creek Drive, it's right next to, it's right across from the Crumps, right by our,
Okay,
or like kind of clubhouse building there.
so that'll at least give us some data as to what's going on from a speed limit or speeding sign.
Okay.
So we can.
So that for next week, that's all you're looking for. You don't want an agenda item where we propose a speed or anything like that. You wanna.
If you could get it to us beforehand, I think we probably could make a decision.
I would like to see us gather that data. Also bring in Jeremy as a consultant to our work session to just talk about what that data means and then what that road was designed for. To make sure that we're not just, again, just willy-nilly saying this is it.
He knows more than we do.
He knows a lot, and I think it would be helpful for his, his viewpoint as a professional in this. With road design as well as the data, I think we could make a more informed decision.
Okay,
I voted against that stop sign removal, but he would probably as help. People don't speed after something, but I digress.
you got it.
That's my
I
corner.
know. Yeah, I've been wrong a couple times.
That's my corner. I've been almost wiped down.
Yeah. All right, well, then we'll move on to item 8 unless there's anybody else that has something. So August 2022 financials, Chris.
I'm so sorry, I'm doing tech support.
Put on your financial hat,
Yes, okay.
August 2022, and while you're at it, September 2022 financials.
You want information?
Well, I guess, yeah, unless, does anybody have any questions?
No, I mean, I reviewed them before the last meeting. And I looked at them again today.
And then we changed the budget since those Anyways, we had a pretty big budget discussion.
Right.
The one thing I do want to point out that as we're talking the budgets, you guys have a council discretionary. And that was originally set up for you guys to use without having to come get permission. To go, if you need to go take the, go take Ben out to lunch and talk shop, or to go meet with an attorney. And utilize that money. Now, if you do some big bills, you might want to get your fellow council members approvals. But that's there for you guys to use on stuff.
And that's 10,000 each.
It's like 150.
Overall.
I get
Yeah,
it.
between all of us, shoot, for all of us.
So just so you guys know, you have some flexibility to go.
Okay, so no Sandy carried it.
Or to buy a phone pizza
That would work too.
for city council. Let's see, there's.
All right, so with no further discussion on the financials, budgetary items, I did not see anything. I mean, the one thing is we're getting a CDL license for Dylan, yeah, so that he can drive the orange truck, but.
And I have a request for the future budget, just want to bring it up, but if we're gonna have all of these events, it would be nice to have a small, maybe and make a line item for like community events and have a small budget in there. And I mean, Woodland Hills Days could be included in there, but it would be nice, like as we get donations, we could put it in there, and then if we don't use it all, we can roll it forward to Santa Claus, or, you know what I'm saying, like. Because every event that we have expenses, and I'm having to go and pay for money everywhere, and it would be nice to have a small line item for the town.
Maybe council could look at getting reimbursement through the, for now, the discretionary, and then under maybe parks. Or something we could put some kind of receivable and track the revenues that way, and then you guys can carry it year to year.
Yeah, it would just be nice to have somewhere to have money.
You guys stop partying so much at Halloween and having such a good time, you know?
It's awesome.
You can join us.
I mean, it was awesome. Watch there.
Okay, there was one item with respect to a crane for the service truck. Our current crane is not OSHA compliant, so we do need to get that. We talked about ways of funding it. We're selling a few things. But it's something I guess it does require council approval, because Cora, what's the cost of it?
16 or 17,000.
Yeah, so
I think it was under 17.
so we did want
It's the white thing you use and lift things. Yeah, that's gotta work well.
And where's that coming from, Chris, that if we approve this 17, where does it come from?
I was split in between Rose and water, I would say, yeah. Put some
Can we vote on that tonight?
It's not on the agenda, and I
Oh.
realized that after,
Okay.
Oh, the first stuff, it's not on there.
yeah.
I was just saying, it'd be good to wait, anyways, until after we get the property tax collection rate.
but it is something that we discussed, because we live without it, could we rent one as needed, or could we borrow one as needed, but the consensus was that it's a critical piece of equipment that we really need. So,
What are we looking to sell?
we are selling what is it, the tar pot? Yeah. And I
So
don't
would
know
we
where
be
that's-
selling the compressor as well? Because the compressor doesn't do us any good without the tar pot,
I don't
right?
know.
And that's a lot of money that you put there.
Yeah,
Yeah, we haven't talked about it.
yeah,
Or the John Deere, or not the Kubota backhoe attachment, we could sell that as well.
okay, well, we can talk about all of those things, so the compressor,
Not
I
the,
don't know.
not the Kubota backhoe,
That's a good thing to keep a hold of as long as you got the tractor.
but we've got the Mini X.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it'd be nice to have that.
Well, and those who would use it, I would defer to their call on whether we need it.
I'll borrow a mini X before I use it.
Corbett, what'd you say?
I would borrow a mini X from someone out of town before I use that Kubota backhoe test.
And I talked to Craig and he's like, I'll never use it, sell it.
It's
I'm looking at the Mini
it's
X.
a little better than a shovel, but not much.
Yeah. Okay, well.
It,
Look into it.
it takes up a lot of real estate in the basement, and it's really more of like a beautiful, expensive coat hanger. Like, there's stuff draped on it, but just thoughts.
Okay, yeah, we'll ask about it, so it's not safe for us, but we'll sell it to somebody.
Yeah, right, but it works, if you have a Kubota, you know, but. It's so, how long would it take you to hook that thing up? 2 hours?
Oh, no, it only takes me about 15 minutes.
Well, right now, to get down there
15
and
minutes to clean it off.
dig it out and.
And then Corbin, do you use the compressor that Ben was speaking of? Is that something?
If we're not, well, if we're getting rid of the tar pot, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to keep it, keep the compressor.
We don't use it for any other purpose? Okay. All right, we'll look into those. And did we get, well, we'll talk about that tomorrow. Okay.
So that will be on next month's agenda.
Well, Chris recommended that we wait until we get
It's
the,
not on the agenda, anyway.
no, we're not voting on it
But
tonight,
he
but
wondered if they should be on the December agenda,
How soon you need it.
the crane, and do we have an emergency?
Wow. There's work that needs to be done, and I can't do it without the crane.
So we can put it on December's.
Okay,
so you don't feel that we need to wait until the tax revenue data comes in, is that what you?
Well,
It'll be close to me having some of the data by then.
Okay,
It's we November 30th,
okay,
and then we barely have some citizens wait till January 1.
all right, so can we, let's make that then an item to vote on, if you would, Jody. Okay. All right, item 11. Corbett, public works and building.
I don't have any updates.
And upgrades to the Maple Canyon well, I don't know, if that's kind of stalled and.
Well, yeah, they didn't get it done as quick as they had wanted to do it, and now they're gonna put it out to bid. Through the normal process, I guess. I don't know why they didn't do that in the first place. But, yeah, I've talked to Matt a couple of times. I mean, I've texted back and forth with Matt Margiel. And he's supposed to be getting me all the bid documents. But I still haven't seen anything.
Okay, and I'm guessing that eventually they will want to come and make a presentation since they're gonna have their hands out for our share. Okay. All right, Deputy Dutson not here. I did write a letter to Sheriff Smith and just let him know that we are interested in exploring the sergeant position and didn't commit us anything other than a willingness to explore it. So, and I did tie it to Deputy Dutson because I don't think that any of us really care to have a sergeant if it's not him necessarily. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Hilliard, Utah.
We haven't met. New transfer station still being constructed and everything's on schedule there. They're actually a little ahead of schedule. And under budget actually so far, so things are going well.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Kinnison, 911 Special Service District.
Just quickly, we had a meeting and it was interesting. Turns out four of them did choose to go with Provo, even though our group gave a bid 4 times less. So that's confusing. So we'll see how long more takes with Provo, but that's crazy. I hope everybody appreciated the type of people that work down there at 911. If you, I don't know if you know this, but Susie, who was our tour guide, she's one of the people in the hot seat during board meetings. She's up there with Heidi and they were a great ship down there, in my opinion. They went through a lot of other stuff that I won't take time on, but there are some new equipment coming soon. For example, a vehicle pursuit channel marker. So when there's a cop chase, they have some automatic markers that are going to help dispatch and help the officers know where things are and when they move, especially across jurisdiction. You know, it's really going to help. So I'm glad when they do things like that. It's important to stay current. But that dispatch center down there that you toured is the go-to dispatch center for any Stillman or CAD questions. They just know it better than any of the neighbors. And so they're going to start trying building contracts with those cities that they've been offering help for free. They've been doing like mutual aid and answering any questions people have, giving classes, training, and so they're gonna back off on some of that, because now they feel like they might be liable, you know, to an extent they don't want to be going there telling somebody how to do something in another city they have no agreement with.
Yeah.
So it was a great 2-hour tour I thought the group had the other night. I loved it, so
Yeah.
thank you for those that could go. We forget it, but it was a neat thing. It lasted 4 hours, but it was good.
Yeah, 2-hour tour times 2.
It was good. So that's all I have on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilmember One.
South Valley Animal Shelter, they had their board meeting today. They're still full, so lots of animals, and they are doing a training on euthanasia next Wednesday. They want us all to go through it and to go to it. And then to go on site and have a hands-on experience.
Oh, no.
So she sent the information out like to us, and I just responded back and said, wanna do this, sorry, so I need to call her and talk to her, but yeah, they're trying to get all of us to do that. And then just the other thing is that we had trunk or treat. And I think it went really well, I didn't hear any complaints. We had a trailer that it had some animatronics. Brad Corporal, he brought all of it, he borrowed the trailer from a friend. And they designed it all, but they had less spooky stuff outside and more spooky stuff inside. We had a little trail the kids could go in and walk through the trailer. We had some guy on stilts there, which was pretty cool. Somebody had something where you could stick your hand in and feel different, like slimy things for the kids. I'm sure that wasn't very hygienic, but you know, it's okay.
And it was good, and if any of you didn't see, Glenn Anderson put together a video that we posted on social media.
That was really good.
We showcased it all, and we were able to send it out to quite a few people, including President Averett, and thank him for using, letting our city partner with the church and having it at that parking lot. And he was excited and happy that we were able to have a good, safe, family, fun activity at the church.
Because we had the state reach out and they were concerned about it being too macabre, so to speak, in a church parking lot. So we, Jody did send out a message. I think it was Jody that sent out the message that day, just reminding people that it is supposed to be family friendly. But we had hot cocoa and donuts. We had donations for those. Thank you. And we had candy for the fire department to hand out, and donations were donated for the trucks, and we can't forget Mike Reed and his little electronic display.
That was really fun.
And then Carrie was we had the Sanderson sisters again, so we got Carrie to be the third. So she had lots of fun. I did not have fun. I was on hot cocoa duty. I was covered in, hot boiling water most of the night. But next time I'll have. Next time I'll have more help on that part, but I think overall it was a huge success. We walked around, Jenny Adams helped me with a lot.
Oh, another year.
She helped me with a lot, and her and I had a garbage can at the end. When everybody left, we had the flashlights on our phones and we were walking around making sure there was no garbage anywhere on the church park facility. My husband and my son were the potty patrol, so bless their hearts, they were on their phones, just kind of. But nobody would go past them because they're both 6 something, right? So Raymond's 6'5", so nobody was getting past him. So they were good guards.
Another thing that I noticed, but what I thought was really fun is in addition to our current residents, we had some of the kids who grew up here bringing their kids back to trick or treat with grandma and grandpa. And it was just fun to see those kids still engaged in our community and still recognizing that we have a sense of community that's really great. And I just appreciated that as well.
I'd say the only negative is that we didn't have, and I would blame the economy on this, is that we didn't have as many people giving out candy.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people coming and wanting to take it, not as many people decorating their cars and willing to hand it out. So that was probably my only negative, and I do blame a lot of that on just the current economic.
Me
uh,
too.
And it didn't last, people ran out of candy fairly fast because there were so many people there, so, but it was still a really fun environment, it was a good night, worth the effort.
Thank you for
Thank you.
everything you did there. I'm sorry I couldn't go, I was sick, you know, I felt a little guilty as you were talking about, you know, some people not showing up. In fact, it's the same reason why you didn't go on the.
Hang over the next night, I need it, okay.
Thanks, Jim. Councilmember Malkovich, Utah Lake and ULCP.
Lake Commission, we won't meet until December. The league, we're meeting often to talk about a lot of the things that are coming up in the legislature, working behind the scenes with legislators and or stakeholders on some really key issues for cities. Last night, we had a 4-hour meeting in Provo. A lot of the mayors, planning commission, not planning commissioners, but planners of the state. It was organized by the state. And there was the Home Builders Association, realtors, all talking about the housing issue. And I thought it was really interesting because there's been some headbutting going on about local control. There are legislators, as I said before, who want to make general plans binding or mandate zoning, whether you want it or not. There's also something out there to do away with all building departments in cities. That would be taken over by someone else. And so there's all of these things that would really be adversely an adverse impact to cities, right? And so part of this roundtable discussion that we had, they assigned us to tables. And for me, there was just 2 of us that were elected that were at my table. And the lobbyists for the Home Builders Association happened to be at our table, as well as 2 realtors, a planner, and a couple city managers. But they gave us exercises to go around and recognizing that there are bad actors in the state. There are some cities who have not done things correctly, but that doesn't necessarily mean an overall state statute that we all have to comply with. Giving perspectives to things. I was able to give perspectives of small towns that don't live next to I-15. Mayor Mendenhall was talking about Spanish Fork and what they have grown to become and what is their impact if they have, you know, an economic development, which they have, then can they support the housing and the water? If they don't, then do they have housing that's mandated, but the people still have to drive to get to wherever their job is? Then what is that trade-off in impact, right? And so they were, because right now the push is housing, more diversity. We're going to mandate that you do this, this, and this, which would include our city. And so by at least giving different perspectives, hopefully we will come to some agreement before these specialized people meet in their groups prior to the legislative session, because right now the governor's task force is kind of leading towards what the Home Builders Association wants. And so Mayor Mendenhall and I just said to the home builders lobbyist, you know, are you considering? He goes, no, we're coming down with a hammer. We are coming down hard and we're coming with a hammer. And so as we started talking, then he's like, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh, I didn't think of that. The mindset is already in place. And so we're really working on trying to make sure that that all voices are heard in cities, whether you're small or large. We're kind of that anomaly because we're somewhat of a rural city in a very populated county, and we're often overlooked. And so these are some of the paperworks we talked about. This was a meeting that was set up by the state governor's office of planning and budget. Prior to this meeting, I spent an hour with Laura Hanson, who is the state planner, and we talked about some of what they're they were allocated money from the legislature. They're doing certain things in different areas, and I mentioned us, and she didn't really realize some of the anomalies of us being a small city in a second-class county. But we also then went on and talked about our TPA grant and some of the things that we're doing, and they're going to be watching as we go forward in our progress with this grant to see if it might be a model for others. And Mike Hansen is also been working with that side of it to just showcase maybe some new innovative ideas on ways that we might still come into compliance with state statutes, but also have a voice that says we would like autonomy and local control. And that's important. One of the other aspects that's coming up is there are legislators who want to do away with public comment and take away some of the authority legislatively from councils and make it more administratively. Some of that might make sense, but all of the cities are in agreement that that is not a talking point for us, that we want to continue with public comment. Some of the legislators say, don't worry, we'll just take the arrows for you. We'll be the ones. And we're like, absolutely not. No, we know our residents, we know our city. We want to hear whether it's loud voices or soft whispers. We want to hear at every stage of the process. And for some, that can be really difficult, especially, I mean, no offense to you, Ben, but developers spend a lot of time and money on the front end as a developer getting ready for the project, and then it has to go through the process, which then might appear to be stifling, when in reality, it's just that public process. It's the planning commission, it's the council that's going back and forth before we get to an agreement that everyone agrees on. And so these are the types of things that are being stirred around the legislature this time of year. But as a league and as league board members, we're actively engaged with a lot of legislators. In South County, we're meeting with Representative White out of Mapleton every couple of weeks to provide him with some input. He is the co-chair of the housing committee. And so if you have any other recommendations of going forward beside, heck no, we don't want any of that, what you're saying, because that's kind of how we're feeling, and yet they're telling us that there's not some consignment, then they're just gonna go forward and not care. So it is a tricky situation, but we're working on it very hard.
Thank you. Councilmember Pratt? Still with us?
It's there.
I am. Yeah, so we, anyway, got noticed yesterday that they're canceling the water board meeting for this month. So that's no news there, and don't really have any news from the planning commission either, so.
Okay, thank you. Where are you?
I am in San Francisco, sitting in the Moscone Center.
Oh, very cool.
Not really.
I was just being polite.
I will just say it's an interesting place to be and to consider problems that cities have. And I'm grateful that we live in Woodland Hills.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't have the same problems?
Oh,
I'll take all of our problems over what they're dealing with here.
they're all yours then.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, SESD, I attended the board meeting this morning. There's some, I've mentioned this before, there's some pretty grave concern about resources. One thing that I came to appreciate too was that there's just more of an open market approach, and actually we've got states like California that are we're competing with them for a lot of the power resources that we've traditionally been able to rely on. So I mean, it's just a constant pursuit. They resolved to engage in a particular solar project, and the difficulty is, and Ben, I think this was to your point last meeting or a few meetings ago, because you did mention that SESD does limit the number of panels that they allow residents to put on their house. Okay, sorry about that.
No, you're.
But I did ask about it, and it is an infrastructure concern. I was told that they are in line with all the other power providers, that they're just in terms of the impact that it has on the infrastructure. They have to limit the numbers, but
I have a prepper neighbor who just purchased a solar trailer and recording and is having an electrician come and wire it. I'm sure if SCSD knew that, they would not, and I won't say who it is, but they're plug in.
oh, yeah, well, I don't have any comment on that.
I know, I'm just saying, like, people are getting creative though, because SCSD is limiting them and they're, you know, they're of the prepper mindset, and so they're concerned.
Right.
I think as long as they don't pump it back into their grid. I think it's fine.
Yeah, again, I mean, I'm not an expert on the impact that it does have on the infrastructure, but that is the primary rationale behind it, why they limit the install. But anyway, the reason I bring it up is mostly because there's a storm coming. Rates are
I'm in a meeting.
potentially be on the increase fairly significantly.
Rate increase for us.
Yeah, so.
Because because they're getting into a bidding war with the bigger cities, basically, right? And like
Well,
California.
And they, well, it's actually, a lot of it is driven by the fact that a number of the coal-fired plants and the hydro plants are being mothballed for either, you know, a shift toward renewables. I mean, you know, so there are a number, and so what we've got is we've got an ever drying up sort of pool of resources, and then increased demand for them, so.
Pray for the elections tonight. That's
Yeah, well, that is definitely, you know, the hope is that better energy policies could improve the situation. But I do think that as far as our cities, that is something that we need to be mindful of.
And when they do that, they will be the ones that inform the citizens, because it is their choice and the board choice, right?
Yeah, there'll be
So-
public meetings that are associated with it, people can offer their input.
And we will know about those so that we can make sure that it's in our city communication if they want to.
Yeah. And then on COG and MAG, I actually had a conflict. I did not attend their meeting this last week, so I don't have any report there. Item 12, possible items reference to city council meetings. I know we discussed a few. And then no council meeting next, no second November meeting, so. Anything else? Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
The next one would be December 14th.
That's my wife's birthday. Remember when I was asking you about stepping in? I might ask you.
There you go. Well, good and birthday, gotcha.
Okay,
To the
well,
meeting.
huh?
Bring her to the meeting.
Yeah. happy birthday.
It's December 13th. It's December 13th is Tuesday.
Oh,
I was thinking.
no, that's my wife's birthday.
December 14th.
Target.
Yeah, because I was like.
Don't check that.
Yeah, let's settle
Yeah.
on the day before you excuse. All right,
13th is mine.
the 15th is yours? Oh, your wife. Oh,
13th, so one of us is going to have a problem with
yeah.
those things.
We'll bring a cake for one of them and we'll just scrape off the name.
Yeah. Just.
Yeah, birthday wife.
Okay, well, with that, why don't we take a 5-minute break and then we'll dispense with the.
I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
I looked, I didn't see it. It's more the national stuff, like just.
Thank you. Okay, call this city council meeting to order. Well, Dave, you're on the agenda for the pledge, but I think that Janet wouldn't mind, it might be easier.
We'll take turns.
And then.
That'd be a good idea.
Okay. Stand.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful to meet together tonight as a city council. We're grateful for the city that we live in, for our residents, for our city staff, and for elected officials who choose to serve in this capacity. We're grateful for the opportunities that are given to us to help manage and protect the quality of life that we enjoy. Please bless us this night that we can make wise and good decisions, that we can use logic in the process. We're grateful for our land of freedom and for the opportunity we've had to vote in today's elections. We recognize thy hand in protecting and granting us our freedoms. And we are grateful to be a part of the process. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, we will open the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone here for public comment? Anyone online? Don't see anybody, so we will close the public comment portion of our meeting. And move on to item 17. City Council meeting minutes from October 25, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Malkovich,
Awesome.
seconded by Councilmember Lunt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. The August 2022 and September 2022 financial.
I'll make a motion to approve August 2022 and September 2022 financials.
Motion by Councilmember Lunt. I'll second that.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Okay, seconded by Councilmember Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Item 20 tabled. Item 21, the creation of an emergency management department.
I think you all saw the, and recognize the importance of doing this and with the presentation last time with the deputy, Aaron and myself. And so I will make a motion to create the emergency management department.
Okay, I'll second that. Councilmember Malkovich for the second by Councilmember Hilliard. Councilmember Malkovich.
Yes.
Councilmember Hilliard.
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt.
Yes.
Councilmember Kinnison.
Yes.
Councilmember Lunt.
Yes.
Motion carried. Item 1, creation, or I mean, excuse me, 22, approval of contract with Rural Community Consultants. This is a ratification, I would point out.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows that that scope of work is going to be adjusted after this vote today, so that it truly reflects what they're going to do. That was based on the early ones. Before I make the motion to approve these two contracts, I'd like you just to, if you can, look at this page that is the Utah Grant Overview. It shows what the grant purpose was originally, and it shows what we were awarded to do. This piece of paper was compiled by Mike Hansen of Rural Consulting. He compiled this on our behalf to showcase what it can and cannot be used for. And it was brought to my attention that, well, one, we have to have reports all of the time. I have to give reports to the state, to UDOT, that we are in compliance with what we were awarded under the Woodland Hills Award. Those are the things that we have to report on. If we are not going to do some of that, and if we don't go forward in a way that is conducive with what the grant was intended for, then Chris has said we will need to write the check and give it back to the city. So just for clarification, that's not a threat, it's just the reality of what Chris has informed me of. So with that, I will make a motion first to approve the contract with Rural Community Consultants.
Okay,
The ability to do that.
okay, very good. Thank you. So motion by Councilmember Malkovich.
I guess I would only have one question concerning, only because my brain's in the financial policies and procedures side of things. Is this things we needed to send to bid or the?
No, because right now we're under the threshold of an RFP. But if going forward,
Over 10 grand, right?
well, because it's two different consulting, that's why we're bringing it to a council vote, is because it's over 10 grand. It has to be over 40 or 50 with one particular person to make it go into the RFP process. Both of them are under that on the second phase. If either of them choose to continue on with after we get the results, we will probably have to put it out for an RFP. But at this point, we do not, because we're in phase.
Well, my question was more just in the 10 grand 240 window, it does delineate getting other bids as well. And I don't know if we went that route or not.
I don't think we have to do, because of the RFP process, we just have to have approval from the council if it's over 20.
I think what he's saying is this particular contract, according to what he pulled off of the code, it does say over 10,000, we need 3 written bids. Not an RFP with 3 written bids.
And this is a phase one of multiple phases that we don't know the cost for.
Well, we know that it has to be within the grant scope. It can't go beyond the grant scope. At all, ever.
There was one little section that said council could override. Do you remember that?
That overriding feature was predominantly stated concerning if, say, one of us in this room held a stake in the outcome, the council and mayor could then say, it makes sense for the benefit of the city to override that restriction. As far as
I checked on this from the beginning with what the state procurement is that we only had to be within the guidelines of the RFP, not anything else. That if we went over our RFP amount, we would have to have a bid, but without, we don't need to. And so that's what I'm going from based on our own procurement for RFP bids of this magnitude.
Are these people's names specifically listed in your grant?
No, none of them are. None of them are, because that's one of the things that you can't really do. You can't do that in a grant. You can say we're going to have planning consultants, we're going to have strategic planning consultants, but you can't say who.
Mayor, what did you mean by your comment when, because maybe one of these is further along than I even know about, and you're saying it's more of a ratification?
This contract has been signed.
Oh,
The discussion of an RFP, I mean,
okay. Thank you for clearing that.
yeah, no, and you know.
We didn't know that he couldn't sign it when I gave it to him. And so, and then when it was told to us, you can't do it, then we said we better put it on here just to clarify.
And I assume you had to sign it to qualify for it.
No, this is after.
Yeah, this was after the grant,
Okay.
it was a rookie mistake on my part, so.
So this is a get out of jail free card.
Well, as Ben was describing, as someone having a stake, actually, you know, you have $50,000 stake.
this is the code. All open market purchases in an amount of $10,000 or greater shall, whenever possible, be based on at least 3 competitive bids and be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder in accordance with the standards set forth in subsection H of this chapter.
Is this just
Dave has a
this
comment.
is just our city,
Those are our city
not
ordinance.
state, because I was going off this, what the state, what UDOT required of me as the grant liaison.
Yeah, and this is me learning this recently in preparations for.
Well,
our previous
I didn't know it.
discussion. So,
Dave, do you have something?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought up this, this issue. Because that's been one of my concerns all along, is this seems, anyway, it's just kind of interesting that we got a grant, but we basically have to pay out the grant to these consultants. So it's not really a grant, if I'm being blunt. It's more of a, it's just a money shell game that's happening at the state level to get their planning the way that they want it done.
No,
Yes.
this is our attempt to help our city with finances we don't have.
oh, I think this is clearly a grant and
We get
we're
to
spending it
choose.
on these consultants. Now,
You can't spend it on anything else.
well, that's exactly.
You can't choose your equipment.
So,
We're not given to us by the city. These people we intentionally chose.
You know who I want to
Every
bid on this
fire-
project, to be honest with you? Let's have the planning commission bid on this. That's what I look for. Well, they can do it.
They're not qualified.
every single one of our grants, so it's like fire, right? If Craig gets a grant for chipping, it goes to chipping. Right?
Or we have swung that to include bins.
Okay,
For his working with the people that gave us the grant.
so there's options we
That's
have
not fair.
here.
We have some
right?
leeway.
Correct, and we've got some leeway on who we could potentially hire, or how we could use the funds to generate the strategic report. Or the strategic plan, or the information that's gonna plug into the general plan.
Well, I want everyone to know, I think this is a slam in the face of the planning commission.
I will return the grant,
Why don't
if
we
that's the
give-
case. That's
Oh,
fine.
yeah.
We can return $116,000 to the state that was designed to help our
That's the way I
city.
feel. That's the way I feel about it.
Okay, that's fine, but I don't. I feel very strongly the other way, and I feel it's a slap in the face for people who put themselves out to get additional resources for our city.
There's
We
no
struggle.
thing as a free lunch, Terry. We pay for
Why?
grants too.
Not ever bring in Craig and give him this same scrutiny,
We
because
pay-
you see it as a
Because
benefit
I
to
know
the
what
city.
those grants do.
What this
I
grant
don't
does,
think this is a benefit. to the
this is a
city.
big benefit to our city, and
Okay,
it's a
well,
huge
and we all
amount.
have a voice, so we can, and we can get a second, we can vote, and you can all voice your respective opinions, so you still have a motion out there to adopt.
I'll second the motion for the rural community consultants.
Okay, so, a motion by Councilmember Malkovich, a second by Councilmember Hilliard. Councilmember Malkovich,
Yes,
Councilmember Hilliard,
Yes.
Councilmember Pratt,
As long as it stays within the money that we're given and the city doesn't ever have to pay a dime, I'll say yes.
that's exactly the scope of the project. There's not a penny coming from the city,
I'm not sure how it's going to count that vote.
Three.
none of the phases.
Yeah, it's either a yes or no, Dave.
Please make a friendly amendment.
Anything beyond the scope of this contract would have to come back to the council.
UDOT would take it away. If we go without the scope of the contract, what they were awarded to
Oh,
us.
I'm saying just
We
financial.
don't get to do the bid. We don't get to have this money if we go outside of the scope of the grant.
I'm not saying that scope, I'm saying financial scope.
Well, that's.
It's the scope goes out, that would come.
All right.
This vote is for you right now. And that's it, not hypothetical, maybe in the future, it can't exceed per this contract, right?
No.
Well, and so David, if.
I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry that,
And I would say you should probably vote no, and then we would see if the motion carries with the remaining votes, and then if it doesn't, then we can do an amended motion that it be subject to the parameters that you're talking about that might get that yes vote. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna vote no.
okay. And Councilmember Kinnison? No. And Councilmember Lund?
Does it always come down to me?
This is- On the-
On our heels here.
I can vote yes, because we have assurances from Carrie that it cannot go beyond the scope of the grant. And so with that assurance, I'm going to vote yes.
Okay, motion carried.
I will
Item-
make the motion that we also do Allegiant Solutions, approve the contract. Again, that was done in conjunction with Rural Community Consultants. As we were looking at the scope of the project and what it entailed, they felt that they were better to handle the planning side of it and to have the strategic and the information gathering on the other side to be complementary partners. And again, they're looking to use this going forward to other communities to showcase innovative ideas and to make sure we have a complete community input, which we all value community input. And this is one of the major aspects of gathering is this idea. And so they are coming to the table together, not separately, but the contracts are separate, but they're coming as a team. This package was put together by both of them. It's not two separate entities. They did this together. And so I respectfully ask that you also approve that contract.
You state the amount, we should put the amount on the record.
Yes, it was 40.
Okay, and can we, and then the last one, just to put the amount on there in parentheses or something, just, we had a
Yes.
vote last year on the fire truck that didn't specifically list an amount.
Yes, the rural consulting was 22,500. Those are both for the first phase. Again, that's nearly half of the money. The other half will be divided respectfully. Phase 2 will be 20%. Phase 3 will be 30% of the remaining.
So today you voted on that last, are you in agreement with that, with the specifying the amount? So do we need to vote again, Jody, or can we just?
You're good.
It's
I
on.
think it was in the presentation, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's only gonna help.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Councilmember Malkovich to approve the contract with Allegiant Solutions.
I'll second it.
And a second by Councilmember Lunt.
I have,
Lunt.
I love you.
I don't know.
I have concerns with the consultants themselves. As I read through this resume, and I did more research than typical to find out more information about them. And honestly, as I read through their presentation, I thought I was reading my resume. Because that's what I do.
Right.
And I personally don't feel I could run these events because of my lack of rural or of communal knowledge. And so my concern is for that dollar amount. I wasn't persuaded by the value add proposition that they presented. And maybe it is due to my ignorance. But I would love to see, I'm highly impressed with David, Mike. Very impressed with him. For me, the mystery of this whole thing is Allegiant. Like, they were saying that they had worked on clients up to $500 million.
They do a lot of organizational.
Very small.
But
organization.
what comes into play though is the experience they have in this realm. It's nationwide, right? When I was going around asking, because I did a lot of research prior, asking other communities, asking other planners. Who they have gotten to do these types of things. A lot of people, they skip this part, right? They skip this part
is the
because
thing.
there aren't people, this isn't a profitable. Public sector money is not profitable for private organizations for the most part.
So this is what I want to be clear on. I believe this step has to happen. I believe the way you architected this grant, the flow. I couldn't agree more with every element. I just haven't been sold on this group running that show. I think we could probably create a better group to run those, because if we're having to do all the invitations, we're doing all the marketing.
Just because we know our residents.
I get it,
right?
I'm just
And
thinking that
I-
dollar amount for the delivery. I think we could create a better group of people to run that from residents of Woodland Hills.
But we couldn't use our grant money to pay them to do it.
Really?
I don't believe so.
Because if we went to bid, so our ordinances dictate that if we
If they
get
have a
comparable
business.
bids for that. We have to side with the resident to win that bid. It's weird,
Why would we have to side with a resident?
because that's
If
what our
they weren't,
ordinance
if they weren't
states.
the best
If
consultant.
they are, if all things are equal and we have tied bids. Tie goes to the resident unless we find some reason that would be a detriment to the city. I personally think we've got people in the city who could run this. For if not free, a fraction of that total, it will give you more money for other avenues in this grant. And I think we'll get better results. I was not impressed with their resume, and you know them better than I,
You're raising your hand back there.
but
Well, and one of it
500 million is not a very large, maybe experience.
They're a small company, but they're the ones that when Mike and I were looking at it and he had Mike is, we have a little bit of a.
Yeah, I think you're the small clarification, please, just if you're considering this, and sorry for interjecting in the actual council meeting. So the specific intent of the grant is to give communities the funding to hire professional consultants to help them plan their communities, right? That's the whole purpose of the grant. So, it's not that you can't go out and rescue, I mean, you couldn't spend the money, for example, on paying the city council to do planning, because city council is a volunteer.
Or the planning commission.
But if you have and to select that consulting firm, whoever that might be, and it could be a resident or whoever. They have to be equally qualified to do the work in which you're specifically asked them to do, right? Planning generally. So that would be the only thing I would just add. I'm not saying who you can or can't pick, it's for you guys to decide. I don't want to jump in the middle. It's just, just be careful that you're using the money for the intent of the grant, which is.
And that I completely agree.
Secondly, that if you, however you reach out, it doesn't have to be that group or another group, it's just equally qualified groups to do the work which is in the scope of work outlined.
Yeah, I think like Rod. I would trust Rod probably more than this group,
I don't know.
but that would, if we're gonna push this to a bid on this one.
I mean, I
This
went
would be
and
the
watched,
group.
I went and watched them perform for another organization. And I saw what they could do. And I felt very, very confident in their ability to do what I envisioned as the scope of this project.
Do you
And
feel-
Mike and I then moved forward and met with them individually for the course of the last 6 weeks, every week, asking questions, tying it down, figuring out how the two scopes of work would mesh. And I asked him without them in the room, do you feel comfortable about this? Is this in line? Is this budget in line? Because I was concerned, but at the same time recognizing I don't deal with contracts that deal with things outside of my scope of knowledge, right? And so I relied on his professional opinion, and he said, this is very much in line with what we would pay or see anywhere else. And he felt comfortable, and he likes the idea of the collaboration. He's actually excited to see where this goes. And that's why I brought it forward now as this joint proposal that I told you Mike wrote as rural consultant, but he recognizes that some of this is outside of his regular scope. And that's why we brought it the way we did.
Per their contract, if they come and do the first meeting. And it's. Not up to, say, a value add level, would we be able to terminate the contract for the remaining, or does this lock us in for all subsequent
No.
division meeting?
There is an out in the contract. That we would just have to give a notice, either side, there's a notice on either side.
Is there
In there,
a link to that?
no,
Well, here's the problem I have with this, is that you guys are making legal decisions, we should engage our city attorney if we're concerned about being able to terminate a contract. Then we should get attorney review.
Well, and
And this one is not.
This is not, this is really something new with phases that will cost.
no, this is about just phase one. And what this would do under page 4 of 5, termination and transfer, either party in its reasonable discretion may terminate this agreement with a 30-day notice. Upon termination, the client and Allegiant Solutions will develop a transition plan for all activities. Compensation will reflect the services and deliverable status at the time of termination.
Okay.
So it is in there. You know, that we have the ability, but they have the ability. If it's not working for them, they can also terminate it. And so that is in the contract.
Yeah, but I'm not relying on the council's interpretation of the contract, I would think that I would feel comfortable signing it, if you're looking for an escape hatch. Then we need to have our attorney review it, I mean, if you're both.
So should they be both then? Both contracts?
I think
Because our
we're already
attorney not
on.
looked at the other one. And to me, I mean,
I'm just talking, because Ben is talking about, like, if it doesn't pan out the way that everyone envisions or everyone hopes it panning out. And we terminate it, and that's a legal question, and without legal counsel, I don't think that we should be making those sorts of
we
decisions.
don't have the termination on real community at all. There's
Right,
nothing
no,
that says that
I'm
they
not concerned with rural. My deal is,
shouldn't be treated the same.
no, I don't think, for me, I don't think so for the sake of. My concern is the experience. Rural has experience contracts doing this with a lot of different people in the past and present.
Not the whole not the whole scope of the project, only portions. of it.
But elements of it, and I haven't seen that from Allegiant from my key worry points, right? And what I'm gleaning from, help me give him his name, from the rural, Mike. Is he hopes this goes well. There's a little bit of a roll of the dice, and as much fun as it is to be the Woodland Hills guinea pig for potential other cities, I just have that concern. Is I'm looking at it for the best interest of us, and if that means we roll the dice by signing the contract with knowing the ability that we can have kind of a tester, because how many service or division groups are they doing?
5.
5. So if we can say it works, great, I'm happy, I'm satisfied. If we can have the first one go and it just is a train wreck. Then we can have a conversation and be able to stop the bleeding before we fork out 40 grand for something that we might not like.
hey, can I
Test it first.
ask a question?
Yeah.
Carrie, you made a comment there that if we don't move forward with it, then we would have to pay the state back.
That's what Chris informed me of that.
We don't use the money.
Right, so what would that look like? So let's go to Ben's scenario where we hold the first meeting, we don't really like it. We decide that Allegiant's not the company that we want to move forward with. And then let me throw in an additional curve that we can't find an alternative company that meets the stipulations of the grant. Where are we at that point?
That is a curveball.
Can I maybe have a little comment on there?
Yeah, please.
So generally, you don't have to spend all of the money, right? They granted the city a certain X amount of dollars. You spend so much, but what you do have to do in order to get the money authorized is check off the boxes of the things that are in the scope of work with UDOT. So, for example, we talked about a general plan in the scope of work, talked about codes, redoing some of the codes and stuff like that. those things you do have to accomplish to get the grant money.
Yeah.
And you're probably gonna find some of this that's gonna be qualified either way to do that. But that's what you do have to accomplish the scope of work, whether that takes all the money or not, I don't know if that's,
Yeah.
if you said, we're gonna give you part of the money back, if you don't, and we'll spend it on, I'm sure they'd say, hey,
Right.
you're the first one ever, but whatever, we'll take it back.
Well, and that's what.
Okay, so
This- that's
let me
what-
ask,
David, just so I can clarify, this, what Ted is saying is correct, and that's why Mike put together this, form for you to be able to see what we were awarded. So general plan, update and ordinances, it also has the strategic planning, community vision, development, regulation, fiscal sustainability, regional vision integration, and addressing Woodland Hills' unique issues by ensuring meaningful public interaction. Those were things that have to be accomplished that are check the boxes in this grant. That they are,
okay,
that's the report that I have to give every so many weeks.
so let me give another hypothetical. So let's say that we start meeting with Allegiant. They do the surveys, they give us, whatever data they're going to give us. And let's just say that it's okay information, but it's certainly not earth shattering or anything that just totally changes the direction that we were, that our general plans have been going. I guess at this point, I'm thinking, again, information never hurts. This was free money that has a lot of strings attached, which kind of mean we have to either spend it or lose it. So, I mean, I guess it doesn't hurt since it's spending somebody else's money to just spend it. The only concern I have is if we spend the money, we get a report, and that then becomes fodder for other people to beat up on our planning commission or our city. That would bother me a lot.
And that is.
Remember, loss of sleep comes with a few reasons. That's what I heard, and I would never deliberately cause anybody on our planning commission to lose sleep. And this is putting a level against them for doing the general plan that they wanted to do in the beginning. I
They
mean,
have to do the
they
general plan.
want to do that, and we don't need help.
I don't think getting more information hurts us in any way or shape or form.
Why do you think it hurts them? Gathering citizen input hurts them.
It's a slam in the face. It's like, I can't even describe how it feels to have some city council say, hey, we're gonna have somebody else do your job. And
No,
then I don't want that group writing our ordinances either.
that is not the intent. That's
You
what
can hear that
that's
when you just read it?
Ted and Wayne are, I
Wait
mean.
a minute, wait a minute.
You're
You
right
read
there.
something on that form that says we have to do some ordinance changing to qualify for that grant.
We have to change our ordinances to match what our general plan ends up saying, and that's
So
what.
we wanna do that anyway. I trust somebody here that does that.
Well, and I think what they're doing is providing option, right? Because like I said, I completely support everything Carrie is. My only issue is are these the right butts in the seat? Sorry for the bluntness there, right? Because the output of their results will inform the input that Wayne gets to utilize in his decision-making process with the planning commission. They're not going to tell him what to do at all.
Never.
It's just providing information for them to make more better informed decisions to make our general plan more inclusive.
And you
That's
just
one
think
thing
that the
we're not-
value of that information is in question in your.
My question is if these individuals with Allegiant have the skill set to pull that monumental task off. Carrie is saying has more
witnessed it.
experience here, right?
Witnessed it.
I have issues some in part with the resume, only because, like I said, it's me reading my resume. But I understand my weaknesses. I understand the scope of experience that I possess in consulting. Right? There's a few red flags I have in the way they've articulated a few things that seems a little boastful is the wrong word, but as consultants, that's what we do. Because literally, we're there going in and saying, let us tell you as a business how you can make better changes. And to make you feel like you want to make that change for a large sum of money to me, I need to sell myself, right? It's just like campaigning, right? We try not to embellish, but we also try and paint our best light. $500 million worth of client oversight is a very, very small sum of money. I've worked on clients where the budget I was looking at was $1 billion. So I'm looking at my experience in its limited scope as a consultant. I had worked with and consulted companies upwards of, I don't know, 500 billion, just because of the size of the company I was working with, right? If I take that conglomerate and aggregate it to make it look like I'm the best I am. Those are my concerns.
Because
Is
they've had 2 small clients.
too small of clients, and this is a rowdy bunch of people potentially that they could have to steer through. So with my experience running groups, visions, that's a skill set that typically comes with extreme amount of experience, and is not something you can just fake it till you make it. Especially because I've worked with like defense contractors where the whole room's full of PhDs, astrophysicists, right? They all know more than me. And so getting them to cooperate with me to a place that they feel uncomfortable, which is not their, that's just a big skill set. That's my concern. So if you're saying that you have viewed them,
I went and viewed them
right?
personally.
You've worked with them, right? You've served with them,
Mhm.
correct?
Mhm.
Then,
Elena has done some contract work with MIT
okay,
in the education realm, and so in the same
Wonderful.
type of thing. Gwendolyn has done work in the small business sector and organizations. Yes, it might be limited in their size of client, but I don't think that necessarily is an adverse impact to us, because we are a small organization.
so that's why the exit potential possibility there is valuable to me. So that we're not locked in for a 40 grand expenditure that could turn into a waste. Because I live in the consulting world, that's typically what ends up happening. Consultants are either good or they're terrible, and the bill's still the same. I don't want us to be stuck with terrible.
And you could all come to the first meeting and view it and see what.
And
happens.
that would be my plan. And so you would have my support.
But are you saying though, I mean, because if you're looking for that escape hatch, you haven't been assured of it.
No, we need legal to look at it. So I would say I'd be happy to vote yes with an amendment to the
If it passes legal.
yes,
Okay, specifically passes legal for what?
for the ability to exit the contract if the first event or whatever ends up not working, whatever is the technical.
Even more favorable termination clause, termination clause.
I want this,
All correct.
or just that it's, if it passes muster for how it's sings and the lawyer agrees, I would be okay with that. The ability for us to find a new consultant
After the first meeting.
after the first or second or third or whenever we decide as a council that it would make sense to change gears.
Right, so terminable at will, basically.
Most
As it
clauses
states.
say for any cause.
Yeah, and that's.
At least
what
ours,
it
say for any
says,
cause, parties can cancel pay.
and they can cancel, we can cancel.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that it specifies what happens to the money. I mean, you could terminate, but a lot of times you terminate, you have a significant cost.
Given a grant, you don't get those rights.
Well, it said in
Plan on
here,
canceling it. If you say yes, you don't get rights to grant money is different than my money. It is, I gotta follow their rules. In other words, you don't own everything in a grant. You have the right to use somebody else's rules to spend their money.
Except we're not talking about the rules associated with the grant, we're talking about the rules.
Every grant,
of
every
each of-
grant has rules.
Well, that may be, but as far as what I think Ben is talking about is our ability to pull out of the Allegiant contract, should it be determined that it doesn't suit. our
It said compensation will reflect the services and deliverable status at the time of termination, meaning that, and that, if we remember in the original part, it was, half of it was upfront, half of it was at completion of the contract. It's not all, we're just giving them all the money up front. It's half.
Because it's a grant, you're giving them all the money.
No,
You can't
No,
stop
it's the-
halfway through. You lose the grant, Terry. You said you're gonna give it back.
so it says,
You
You're-
can
you're
fire a lead
confusing
to hire
some
someone
things.
else.
we can hire somebody
You
else,
just have to have
or
professional services.
we
You
can
hire
figure
a
some
lead to
balance left and
hire
put it back to
someone
you,
else,
Doc,
use the money.
not the total. So it's, we can't turn and say, "Well, that didn't work, let's buy a new oil pot or something, right? But I know that, but like, so it's not we sign this contract and they're now, they get 40 grand for deliverable or not. We can
Say you haven't
we can
delivered.
say, yeah, so
Or
it's.
they could say, we don't feel that this is the right move for us. So it's either side and it's compensated by amount of work that is done at the time of termination. Now, again, looking to this page that I gave you, this is what the grant was for. This is what I wrote it for. Every few weeks, I have to give a report on what we have done, the steps to complete this portion of the grant. We are required to complete this portion of the grant. I did not include an active transportation, multimodal plan, or all of these other things, that could have been in there. I only put those things in place because I thought that it would be beneficial for our city. I feel that either we are all in or we're all out. Because if I can't, in honesty, say that we are working towards what the scope of the grant was for, why they gave it to us, then let's just go back to status quo. And planning commission will do their thing, whether we got this grant or not, that's still a state statute. And I apologize publicly to Wayne if you ever thought that I was trying to slap you. That was not my intent in doing this.
Okay, so I don't know if you, Terry, you made the motion, Jan, you seconded. Do you want to run through the vote or do you want to withdraw the motion? And then we make it subject to legal review?
Can we amend it to say for legal review? I'm okay with that.
Is there gonna be enough money to complete the scope of the project?
Well, that was another condition that was talked about.
Yeah, that's, this money is all that there is to complete the project. And it was decided between the consultants on those percentages. 50% upfront because that's the basis and foundation for everything, then 20% and then 30%. And
Wow.
that's the percentages that they put into place, knowing their own skill set and also recognizing what we were awarded and what we have to report on.
Why did the word phases come in?
We decided to do that up front because you can't write a scope of, the scope of work that we're going to do without knowing those deliverables from the first part. And so being able to come in and say, okay, here's the overall thing, we're gonna get public input, and if, no matter what that input says, here's our deliverable. By doing it in phases, we are able to say, okay, we can craft the rest of the phases based on that knowledge that we get for our citizens. And as you can see from those phases, the visioning phase, the gathering of the information, then that second phase is the planning phase. The third phase is implementation. We are not just going to have a document that sits on the shelf, but how are we all, whether it's planning commission, whether it's our staff, whether it's us as a council, how are we going to implement that so our citizens recognize that their voice that was heard in visioning phase actually takes them someplace, that it was actually implemented, that it didn't just hit the wall and say, well, the city council have heard what we were concerned about, but there's no outcome. That seems a little bit ridiculous to me. And so any plan should have an implementation phase, but it's based on how do we get that information? how that turns into the plan. Once the plan is there, what are the steps to implement it? And are those metrics showable to our residents?
Okay, so what I mean, you sort of got the temperature of the council, so do you want to make a revised motion or an amended motion or a new motion then?
I will take Ben's suggestions and we can amend the motion.
Okay, so that motion.
Was
specifically
to
is-
adopt it, and then, with contingency on legal counsel's approval of that wording about termination.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the contract, subject to legal's confirmation that the contract can be terminated at our discretion. I mean, is there a dollar amount that, I mean, because are we giving 20 grand up front? I mean, do they walk away with 20 grand if
Well,
we decide after meeting one that?
Technically, if you read that, if they have not fulfilled the 20 grand, that money would need to be returned.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a prorated payment option that allows us to terminate.
And I
You got that, Jody?
Each of their deliverables,
Frantically typing.
Harry, I believe each of their deliverables is delineated by a dollar amount.
Yeah.
correct? So it's quite clear as to what they're doing costs what.
Okay,
So we can just go down the list and say, yes, 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 no. Here's the number, less than 20, there's a check coming back.
How will you get the money back without having the legal fees?
That will not happen. I've done consulting, a lot of different consulting things in my 42-year career. Consultants. And they spend the money. There's no way you're gonna see them with that back.
all right.
they
So
sign,
you'll be able to vote no.
Serious, I want the council to hear what we're saying.
but the termination and transfer, it's not just our signature on the line, it's their signature. It is a legal contract that is binding by both parties.
Okay,
The termination and
I think-
transfer is there. The
Even,
compensation reflecting is in there.
even at a loss though, of 20 with the ability to pull out is still better than a loss of 40.
And it's
So I'm still okay with that.
okay. All right, so we have the motion.
You get the further thing.
We have the motion by Councilmember Malkovich.
And then.
I'll second that unless Janet wants it.
You can.
A
I
second.
already have a second by Councilmember.
I had seconded it the first.
Yeah, the first motion was seconded by Janet, but this is the first time we've had this motion. So a second by Councilmember Hilliard. Councilmember
Okay.
Lunt,
Yes.
Councilmember Kinnison. No. Councilmember Pratt,
No.
Councilmember Hilliard,
Yes.
and Councilmember Malkovich.
Yes.
Motion carried. Okay, so we'll add that to our meeting with the attorneys tomorrow.
Hopefully it's not a very big contract, right? So it won't be much of an expense for them to review it.
Yeah, well, and I think that we've got a pretty specific objective in mind. I mean, making sure that we can terminate it.
I'm just saying it should be pretty simple on their part, right?
What, $500? That's simple.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
you
know.
spend that.
I mean, I don't know how much it will be, but it shouldn't, it's just a contract review, so it shouldn't be too much.
Yeah, I'm saying it should be
It's like
pretty simple.
50,000, and that's what we're asking. So
Yeah.
we got that going for us.
You know, it would be good to clarify with them what this discussion has been and make sure that they understand that as well before we go forward with it. If they're satisfied with it, then fine. If they have some objections, then now's the time to work through those objections.
Well, and I mean, the way it was presented here tonight, this motion, it sounds like their review is going to be very specific. It's going to be very specific. I mean, there may be other terms that they don't like too. I don't know. I mean, that's, and whether we should proceed with potentially other adverse terms. I mean, well, they'll flag, if there's something that is really problematic, they'll let us know. And so we haven't, I mean, it's not even signed the contract yet, so.
Correct. And once you have, prior to sending funds, it could be terminated as well.
Yeah. Okay, no, that was lively. Okay, item 24, if okay, maybe we can have the motion approving the disbursements for August and September. We need to do those separately, Jody?
There are two different separate resolutions, yes.
Okay, all right, so item 24, approving the August 2022 check disbursements.
I'll make a motion that we approve the August 2022 check disbursements.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Lund, seconded by Councilmember Kinnison, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, and September 2022.
I'll make a motion.
A motion by Councilmember Hilliard,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Lund, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, there is not really any legal update to speak of, so unless there is a request to enter closed session, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Councilmember Hilliard,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councilmember Pratt, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We adjourn.
I feel more now. Yep. I'm okay. I'm